everyone, and welcome to Twitch Tales episode 82. Where did we leave off in episode 81? Well, Apis has found themselves at the Merry Gentleman's table for dinner with the Wild Woman, another of the Arch-Fey Council. During this dinner, they were playing a Fey game called A Question of Course, which is used for fancy dinner parties like this. Whereby for every course of the meal, it is expected and allowed for one person at the table to ask one other person at the table a question, any question you like, but there are certain sort of etiquette rules around what is expected, what is polite to ask, and what is polite to answer and such. And so Apis, for this 9-course meal, was answering questions from the Wild Woman, an archfey that has a fascination with all things material plane. And Apis was in turn asking questions of the Wild Woman, of the Merry Gentleman, and of the other guests at the table as well. All sorts of things were asked and answered. If you want the specifics, obviously you have to go back and watch the previous episode. But at the end of that episode, at the end of the table, the end of the dinner time, at the end of the dinner, Merry Gentleman turned to Apis and asked one final question, as their final question of the dinner. They said to you, Apis, what is the question that you most want the answer to? And using their question to ask you to ask your question, they've opened it up to a great deal of internal debate for Apis, I'm sure. So that's where we're picking up today. As you are just finishing the meal, the Wild Woman and the other guests have put their spoons and plates and cutleries and everything down and been cleared away. You're having your aperitif and whatever else, and the Merry Gentleman has given you the choice. What is the question that you most want the answer to? Apis, what do you say? Well, here we go. Yeah. I seem to be important to many, from crime bosses to gods. Some I know, some I don't. Why am I important to you? That's a good one. Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take notes of some of the ones that are coming up here, and then we will be able to put it to a poll as to which ones. Alright, why am I important to you? What are the questions are people interested in? Why am I important to you? I think we should first acknowledge the question and buy us time for our internal dialogue to occur. You go, good question. There you go. How much time did that buy you? Apis thinks to themselves, I just want to help those I care about. The people of Shadridge are my friends, but the Merry Gentleman knows that, so it's the same question asked when I arrived, which I hope we can still discuss later. Ooh, okay. Same as when I arrived. But do not say it in front of people. Very good. What traits do you think would best describe a great leader, warrior, family member, and friend, and how would you judge yourself on those traits? Wow, okay. When was my second trip to the Feywilds, and what happened while I was here? How do I save my friends? Very open-ended. What information I don't yet know will be most vital going forwards? Ooh. What is the purpose of my life? Jeez Louise. There's only certain restrictions on what he knows or what he can answer. Part of Apis must want to know the reasons for existence itself, if there is a greater purpose in it all. Purpose for any life. What happened in our hometown at the day of the tragedy? How can we revert a Weirfox effect? We have to be aware we're asking this in front of all the dinner guests. We have to decide whether the question we're asking is something we want the others, especially the Wild Woman, to hear. Yes. How did you know about and find me? I can tell you have some interest in me. What qualities do you have that you should give me interest in you? Ooh, okay. Why should I be interested in you? Based on Helenya's story and questions I've asked prior, are there individuals trying to bring back an Age of Dragons? Good question. Who is the Green Woman and the Dragon from our dream? Yeah. Who rode the dragon? What happened to my mother and Lakara? In the same way as the Ungahev question. Yeah, what happened to my family? That's family and friends. Alright, we will wrap it up there then. So what do we think are the most important ones? Something like, what is most important to us? Something like, how do we save our friends, Shadridge? How do we close a portal? Asking about a second trip is pretty safe at present company. We'd either get a non-answer or some tales of a grand adventure, or we'd maybe get a tale of us sitting in a library reading, who knows. Portal stuff. Question about family. How do we save our friends, or who was on the dragon? Let's start crossing them out then. So, let's go with why am I important to you? People are saying that one's pretty useful, so I'll keep that one. How do we do portal stuff? We'll keep that one. What traits define a good leader and why do you have them? I'm not really seeing anybody voting for that right now, so we'll scrub that from the list because we've got to start cutting them down somewhere. When was my second trip to the Feywild, or when were my first 2 trips to the Feywild? I think we'll keep that one for now. How do I save my friends? People are definitely thinking that's important. What is the purpose of my life, or what is the purpose of life in general? People aren't really asking that one, so we'll get rid of that one. What happened that fateful day in Shafgushal / what happened to my parents and family and blah blah blah. We'll keep that one for now because people are wanting that one. Alright, how did you first know about me? Nobody's really voting that one, it seems, so we'll scrub that one. Why should I be interested in you? Not so much. That's a good question, but I don't think it's what Apis is most interested in right now. What information do you not want to divulge? Some people are saying that one, so we'll keep that one for now. Are there any individuals trying to bring up about the Age of the Dragons? Very good question, but I don't think it's the question that Apis most wants to know about. Who rode the dragon is definitely coming up a lot, but I guess we can tie that into what happened in Shafgushal, what happened to Mum, who rode the dragon. We can tie those all in. Alright, so we're down to why am I important to you? Anything to do with portals. What were my first trips to the Feywild? Or when were they, or whatever. How do I save my friends in Shadridge? What information would be most vital to me? What happened that day in Shafgushal? And how to remove were curses. We're down to 7. We've managed to get down to 7. I still need to cut us down to 5 if I'm going to put it to a poll. So, why am I important to you? Like, what's my importance to you rather than to the gods and things? What is your interest in me? How do I do portals and how do I remove curses? Like, were curses? What happened on my first trips to the Feywild? How do I save Shadridge? Actually, how do I save... Because Shadridge is at danger from the demons, so portals and Shadridge, we can probably tie that into one question, can't we? So we'll get rid of how do I save my friends and tie that into the whole portal thing. What information is most vital for me that I don't yet know? And what happened with my family in Shafgushal? Portals is something Merry Gentleman's going to work with us on anyway, so maybe not that one. Could we decide whichever way we go, we ask it in a way that doesn't give us information to the wild, don't we? Remember, we likely don't get an answer right now, we're just asked to give a question. Yeah, he asked you a question. What is the question that you most want the answer to? He doesn't necessarily have to answer it right now. Drop the workers. He's already answered a version of that. He has mentioned that if you were to bring someone with a workers to him, he could probably remove it from them, but he can't do it from a distance. And you already know a few things about workers curing anyway. There's a few books that you haven't read and things. So yeah, I think we removed the workers one because it's not the most pressing question for Apis, which I think leaves us with 5. Why am I? What's my importance to you? What happened on my first trips to the Feywild? My first 2 trips to the Feywild. What information do I not yet have that is most vital for me to have? What happened in Shafgushal 3 years ago? And anything to do with portals and how do I save Shadridge from the demon portal situation? I think that's a good 5 selection there. So we're going to put it to a poll. So we did not get a majority. 31% of people saying that they want to ask about what information is most vital, but 27% wanting to ask about Shaf Gushal, 21% wanting to ask about Shadridge, and 19% wanting to ask about why am I important. Only 2% of people wanted to ask about the Feywild, so that one's gone. If I added that one to this one, it still wouldn't be enough, so if I got rid of those two... Alright, 61% of people deciding Apis is going to answer this question with what is the information that is most vital for me to know that I don't yet know. So like a cop-out question, essentially. All of this just for a cop-out. Cool. It's a very fake question. It is, yes. So you're sitting at the table when the merry gentleman asks you, Apis, what is the question that you most want to know the answer to? And you sit there and think for quite some time. You're umming and ahhing. I guess you've got thoughts of your family running through your head, not knowing what happened to them, not knowing what the events of that fateful day actually were and what led to Unguhef deciding to attack seemingly out of the blue. Who was riding Unguhef and why? Were they in control? Was he being manipulated? Was he being used as a weapon of destruction? You think about Shadridge and you think about the demon portal and how you have not the first idea of how you're going to close those portals, and you think about your friend Mosh and his victim Beladel, who is slowly becoming a werewolf, and how it's an affliction and a curse, and you want to be able to help him, but you don't know how. You think about the fact that the gods seemingly have an interest in you, and you don't know why, and you don't know what this Horizon Walker actually means. You don't know what it means to be this. You don't know what the responsibilities are. You try and think, is there a way for me to put all of this together? Can I ask all of this at once? Like, it's important to know, like, which one of these things is important. I've been dragged in all sorts of different directions. I need to know what's important to me. You think, oh, actually that's a pretty Fey way of answering. And so you think, okay, how am I going to word this? And you start to answer. I suppose the question that I most want to know the answer to would be, what information that I do not yet know would you consider to be most vital for me to know? The merry gentleman smiles a merry smile and says, very clever. You're a very clever person, Apis. The wild woman, sort of just looking between the two of you. The merry gentleman says, well then, let's see what we can do. I believe it's time for our guests to depart. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our dinner party. But as always, I appreciate your company. And as he's speaking now, as he's announcing the fact that the dinner party is coming to an end, the band in the room starts to play a little louder, a little bit more lively, and the people at the table start to stand, and you can see that they are starting to move somewhat rhythmically. They're not exactly dancing, but they are moving towards the, like when you sort of dance walking through a club or something. he does this sort of thing as he's walking, as they're walking towards the door of this dining hall. The doors are flung open, and the guests start to spill out. The merry gentleman is kind of walking beside or behind you as you also vacating the room. And as they enter the foyer, you can see that in the foyer is a decorations that you haven't seen yet. It's decorated with basically floral arches that they don't exactly form a full tunnel, like from the doorway of the dining room to the doorway of the mansion proper, the front doorway. But they do guide you in that direction. There's a few rings, a few arches of these floral displays, these fey flowers that kind of set the direction that you're expected to travel, I suppose. So as people leave the dining room, the band is leaving with you, and it doesn't have that same instant change of music just cutting out or cutting in as you experienced when you first entered the dining room, because the band are coming with you now. And as the guests all start to enter the foyer, as it were, which is decorated in this floral design, they start to turn and address one another in a way that's sort of reminiscent at the end of a football game or something, when the players kind of line up and they all go down the lines shaking each other's hands, and then the people at the far end turn and join the end of the line so that they can shake the hands of the people behind them, because otherwise they wouldn't get the chance to do so. You're walking out of the dining room in somewhat single file, and Dopnaish turns and greets. Actually, who is it first? You have to go in reverse order of distance travelled, which would be Dopnaish, and then Rakesh, and then Hellenius, and then you, and then Wild Woman. So you're walking out in this order. A receiving line, yes. Dopnaish turns and doesn't handshake or greet Rakesh, but does like a little half bow, half curtsy thing, and then a little bit of a jig and a dance, kind of dances essentially with Rakesh, who reciprocates a little bit of a jig, a little bit of a dance. It's not exactly line dancing, but it's definitely partnered dancing as they're kind of looking at each other and bowing. One of them spins around the other one and then joins the next part of the queue, and Hellenius does the same with Dopnaish, and then the same with Rakesh, and then joins the end of the queue. And they are dancing their way out of the mansion. Very gentleman not in the line. No, he's the host, so he's coming in the very last of the thing, and he's going to dance his way all the way through, all the way out of the door with you guys, essentially. So as they dance their way down the line, eventually it gets to your turn, and you've seen enough people do it now that you can see. Oh, I meant to dance my way out of the dinner. Essentially, it's like it's a way that they round out the dinner in a Feywild, I guess. So first, you're going to dance with Dopnaish, and you are going to roll a dexterity-based performance check. You are not proficient in performance, so it's just a straight dexterity roll. Let's roll you a. Let's go turn your dice cam on. Let's clear up some room there and get out of the way. Here we go. 16 plus 3 dexterity. Very good. So dancing with Dopnaish, very good. It seems to work really well on that one. Then on the next one is Rakesh. That's 19 plus 3. That is a 22. And then with Hellenius, that is a 15 plus 3. Very good. That is an 18 on that. So you are dancing very well with all of them. And then you join the end of the queue, and the Wild Woman steps up to you, and you start to dance with her. And 18 plus 3, there you go. That's a 21. And then and then she joins the end of the queue beside you, and then the Merry Gentleman steps up and dances with you. That is a 3 plus 3. Can't have all been good, I suppose. Can't have all been good. So fantastic, really well on the first 4 though. So you did a little dance with the first of them. You're getting it very excited that you're doing so well. Eventually, the Merry Gentleman is the last one to join you. I expect the Wild Woman to stare at us unblinkingly the whole dance. Yes, and it's not like a long dance, as I say. You kind of get to each other. You do like a little bow curtsy thing, and then you do like a little jig around each other, and then they join the next end of the queue. best do-si-do ever, and then we roll an ankle. As you're dancing with the wild woman, you say, I hope you find love in your life. And she says, I hope so. I would be fascinated. It's unnerved by the wild woman's dance that you stumble into the merry gentleman. Yeah, there's just a bit of like you stepped on the wrong foot with the merry gentleman or something, and there's like a from people around you that are like, ooh, major faux pas etiquette thing. There's a little giggle from the wild woman beside you watching you stumble with the merry gentleman, but he's proficient enough as a dancer himself that as you stumble, he kind of takes your arm and spins you around, and then turns it into like a round the back thing, and then do-si-does around, and he makes up for your stumble, your faux pas, and doesn't seem perturbed by it. And people following his lead are like, okay, he's not going to kill him. Whew. Okay, he's not gonna kill Apis for getting that wrong. All right. As they get to the door, people then start to work their way back down the line again. I won't roll for all of them again, but they once everybody's folded past each other and headed to the door, the merry gentleman is the last one to go down the line, which means that he's the first. He's standing right by the entrance of the door, and then everybody starts to leave. Dopnaish leaves, but stands just on the other side of the door because he actually lives in this abode with the merry gentleman. Helenius leaves, and as she gets out onto the porch, she sort of turns around one last time, gives a little curtsy bow, and leaves off of the porch and round the side of the house. She's going back towards the tree where she lives, the grove where the rest of the dryads work. Rakesh leaves the abode, says to you, give it time for your food to settle, and then I'm happy to continue our training whenever you're ready. And then he leaves out into the twilight night, the twilight morning, I suppose it is technically, and he wanders off up over the terrain of this property and up the hill towards the forest. Where you fought him before. For those who don't know, Rakesh is a centaur who is currently training you in how to be a better fighter. The wild woman walks past you and says, "It was truly a pleasure to meet you, Apis. I've learned a lot about you and your people, and I'm sure we'll meet again sometime." And then she gives a little bow curtsy and heads out. Merry gentleman, she gives a greeting, a departing greeting to him in the other language that you've heard them speaking that you don't speak, but it seems to be like Old Sylvan perhaps. He says something back to her. You can tell from the cadence of how they're speaking that it's definitely like a formal thing that is expected of them to both say this thing, whatever it happens to be. And then she turns, she leaves the building. And as she walks out, you can see this like this rolling of the grass beneath his front lawn, as it were, almost like a wave, like an orca coming in from the side. When you see the wave kind of bulging up in front of it, you see this on the grass, and then the grass breaks open like a cresting wave, and a lion head comes out of the ground, seemingly like this huge, sort of a lion the size of a rhinoceros. Comes up out of the ground and like right behind her as if it's coming for her. You're startled for a second as you're like, wait a minute, has she seen this thing that's just straight up going to attack her on the front lawn? Merry gentleman doesn't seem to have either noticed or cared. He's definitely noticed that you'd think, because as you look to him to be like, what's happening, he's just like looking and watching and smiling and watching her go. The lion like comes up right behind her, and then she just sort of leaps in the air just at the right moment and lands on its back, and the lion just takes off, and it is very fast, and she just disappears off of his property. The merry gentleman watches her go. His smile turns into more of a smirk, almost to himself as you watch him. And then he says, "We need to work." And he turns to you and snaps into very quick work mode. He waves his hand, and the flower arches disappear. They sort of sink back into the floor like they're instantly wilting. Actually, no, they wouldn't wilt because that's kind of cool. That's kind of gross to look at. So he doesn't like the gross things. He likes the pretty things. So it's like not wilting. They are reverse aging essentially. So the flowers on this arch sort of turn themselves back into buds and then ungrow like a time lapse played in reverse. They sort of shrink themselves back down. With just a wave of his hand, he says, "We need to work. Apis, I've got some things I need for you to do. You'll be training with Rakesh tonight. I will add a little extra something to that, and I will be there for it. Take some time for your food to digest. Head back to the library. You've got things to read, I'm sure. I have things to do, and then I will meet you at Rakesh's when you're ready. Rakesh will let me know when you're there." And he strides off up the stairs. He takes the stairs about 3 at a time. His legs seem to get longer as he walks, just so he can move a little faster. Basically, he casts Longstrider on himself for free, and then he just sets off into his mansion, up the stairs and down the corridors at quite a clip. Is there anything on the no touchy shelf that I can look at? And he doesn't respond. He just walks away. I have a question, and he's gone. Yeah, and it leaves you alone in the foyer of his mansion. Apis, what do you want to do? Go read some of our other book selections for an hour or so, and then head out to train. Same rule about swimming after eating also applies after training after eating. Yeah. How tired do we feel? Like it's about 5 p.m. on a not so busy day. Are you still wounded from before? You are, yes. Yeah. You're still at, as you can see in your character sheet, 37 of 74 hit points. Talk to the Dryad about the tree, how to use it as a portal home. You could. The Dryad has left. She's walked around the back of the house, back towards her grove. So you'd have to run off and try and find her if you wanted to do that. You could run after Rakesh, try and find him as well. Rakesh left before the Wild Woman did, so again, he's also long gone. We've trained and then library and then explored and then dinner today. So it actually has been pretty extensive day. So you are probably feeling relatively tired. Short rest gets back some HP. Can do if you want. If you take a short rest, you can spend a hit dice to recover a D10 plus your Constitution modifier. So you'd recover a D10 plus 2 hit points from taking a half-hour short rest. But you only get back 1 hit dice per long rest. So 1 hit dice a day. You're currently at full hit dice because you're level 6 at the moment. Are you technically level 7 yet? I'm not sure. It's kind of iffy. It's iffy squiffy. You're in the middle of training up to level 7. I'm not sure that you have your level 7 abilities yet, so I don't think you're technically level 7 yet. Is there an infirmary? A healer? You could ask around the people of the mansion, see if there is an infirmary of sorts in his abode. Rest and then anxiously overthink all of the social interactions that we just had. Yeah, sounds like Apis. Go back to the library, have a rest, eat, drink, sing some songs, sleep. It's only about 5 p.m. Do we need to rest or sleep right now? You don't need to sleep right now. You probably could if you sat down and let your adrenaline from the day wear off. We'll go down and get heals during training anyway. No point in burning the hit dice. We do have action surge. Yes, yeah, you do. You don't, because you used it in the fight with Rakesh. So yeah, I'll say you are technically level 7 then. So you're probably one dice less than your max. An hour seems like a good time to leave it. How many healing potions do we have? 2, it says in your inventory. I don't fully remember where you got them from. Edith, I think. All right, let's put it to a poll. Do you want to go back to the library and start reading some more for about an hour or so? Do you want to have a short rest and recover some hit points? Do you want to try and find an infirmary, see if there is one where maybe they can recover some hit points for you? Or do you want to go and find someone? to ask questions of like Rakesh or the Dryad or whatever, to be like, hey, how did I do? How did that go? Was that a good one? Is that normal for her to ask so many questions of me? Did I do anything wrong? 56% of Apis' mind wants to read some more. So, you decide, I'm going to take a little bit of time. As the Merry Gentleman suggested, I'm going to go back to the library and pull up a book that I haven't read yet. So you do so. You make your way back to the Merry Gentleman's library. Easy enough done. Alright, so the options we had were books on Horizon Walkers. You've read a book on Horizon Walkers already. Books on the Sun Rituals. You've already done that one. Map books. If you want to know more about the Feywild and the layout of it, then there's a map book of the Feywild you can read about. Books about portals, portal travel and things, if you want to start reading about how to close portals and things. Books on therianthropy, if you want to know more about were curses and such. And that's it. And then there's the books on the Merry Gentleman's Do Not Touch shelf, which you could definitely try and touch if you wanted to. If you really wanted to read some of those, you have you've discovered a couple of the book titles on his book of important things. Rob, can we look at the rest of the No Touch shelf titles that we didn't get to see before? Yes, you can. Yeah, sure. You can do so, and I have it somewhere. So, entering the library, you head over to the Merry Gentleman's Do Not Touch, for my eyes only kind of books, and without touching them, you look at the ones that have titles. You can see that it's a shelf of around 20 or so books. And many of them are different shapes and sizes and various looking levels of importance. Some of them are really large and gaudy with like golden trim, and some of them are much smaller and more inconspicuous in their appearance. Some of them have titles on their covers, some of them have titles on their spines, some of them don't have any writing on them at all. But of the ones that have writing, you can see one is called Blurred Lines. Can only gods imbue power? One of them is called What Do Blue and Orange Mean to You? A Guide to Morality. One is called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. One is called Fey and Their True Names by I Am Not Going to Tell You That. One is called Isgrither Sanctaise, and it doesn't have an author. One of them is called The Power in the Dark. One of them is called Planers and Their Division, a History. One of them is called What Makes a Species? Creation and Evolution. One of them is called Swordsmiths of Rin. One of them is called Whitecraft, The Riviera and How They Gained Power. One of them is called Peoran Piracy Through the Ages. One of them is called Peaceforged, A Treatise on Sentient Automatons Outside of the Military. And one of them is called Who Was Really Here First? And the rest of them don't have titles that you can read. Why do I always get the lists? And the dreams. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory implies Merry Gentleman has been to our world. Not necessarily. Could we ask one of the librarians about the map book and if there is a location in the Feywilds where the moon doesn't shine, so we know a safe place to bring Mosh if ever take him here to be cured? You can indeed. You ask one of the fairy librarians, one of the pixies, is there a place in the Feywilds where the moon doesn't shine? And she says, no, the moon rotates around the plane every day. Both of them. One of them takes one moon to get around, and one of them takes a cycle. There are 2 moons in the Feywild. One of them takes about a month to do a full rotation. One of them takes 24 hours. So there is nowhere that is without moon. However, with the planet being tidally locked to the sun, the phases of the moon are only viewable from certain parts of the plane. So a full moon is only ever on the other side of the planet to the sun, obviously, because that's how that works. You got the planet, you got the sun, the planet, and the moon, and that's why you can see only the illuminated face. That's what makes a full moon a full moon, because it's directly opposite the sun, and you can only ever see the full moon at nighttime. So it's tied. So the only place on the planet that has a full moon is the eternally dark side of the forest, the side of the planet, the one that they call the night side. Solar eclipse. Solar eclipses obviously would only ever happen on the scorched side of the Earth, side of the Feywild planet, because the moon would pass in front of the sun, and so therefore the moon has to be on the same side as the sun. Science. What would happen if we tried to read one of these books? I don't recommend it. But what would happen if we did? I cannot recommend it. If I was to acknowledge your recommendation and then try and read one anyway, what would happen? I don't suggest you find out. I'm going to start reading some books here. Can you tell me when we've had about an hour or so, please? An hour? Yes. Could you let me know when we've had about an hour? Yes, I can let you know. Ask the librarian if we wanted to return, is there a courteous way to ring the doorbell equivalent on the edge of the property? Just a question while I'm thinking about it. Is there a courteous way of announcing my presence if I want to return to the Merry Gentleman's property? Usually you would have an invite if you want to come to the property. But if I happen to turn up without it, is there a possible way of me announcing that I'm here? I would be surprised if you could find this location without an invite. Oh, is that right? How did you get here this time? I was led by a dryad. Yes, there are abjurations in place around this property and the mansion and the tree, the grove. It is difficult to find without knowing where it is. But now that I've been here, I don't know where it is. You know where it is now. Does it move? The location doesn't move, but the surrounding terrain does. Oh, right. Okay. So I probably wouldn't be able to find this location again once I've left it, unless I'm invited here. That's correct. Okay, thank you. Can we agree that Ipis decides not to do that ever unless given explicit permission to do so? No, touching means don't touch. Don't annoy our host. You seemed scared about knowing that the wild woman was around. Would you feel any better knowing that she left the property? I was happy for her presence in the mansion. She's always a fascinating time. Fascinating's right, yes. Well, she's gone now. With your insight, you don't have an insight proficiency, but you have a +2 because you're decently wise. You can probably tell that she's somewhat relieved that the wild woman's left. Speaking of trees, I saw a strange liquid surrounding one outside. Do you know what that is? Do you refer to the Gentry? Yes, maybe the really large tree out the back of the property here. Oh yes, the Gentry. Yeah, it's surrounded by a moat of some kind, like a liquid. That's right. And do you know what that is? What the Gentry is? No, what the liquid is. Do you know what it is? Oh, it is water, I think. Ah, okay. I don't think it is. But never mind. You're asking a librarian fairy. She's not one of the dryads. She's not in charge of the abjurations around the tree, so she's not going to know a hell of a lot about it. So, which book do we want to sit down and start reading now for an hour? Reading time. Which one do we want to know about? It's where we dispose of the bodies. The map book. Maps. We want to know about maps of the Feywild. About portals. Does water burn in the Feywild? No? Right. Never mind. Alright, maps, portals, were curses. I think those are the three that most people are going to be interested in. Let's bring up the document again that says about them. Portals, lycanthropy, maps, and then there's the sun ritual and the horizon walkers, but we've pretty much read all we want to, or all we're going to get from the horizon walker and the sun ritual books, I believe. So it's going to be maps, portals, or lycanthropy curses. Alright, so poll time. Which book to read for an hour? Alright, 67% of the vote decides Apis is going to read about portals. So that's one of those three that we've got. One of them is a university textbook written by an economics professor, points out several problems with the economy as a result of planes. It has an early chapter about common methods of planar travel, but not the science behind it, as you sort of skim read it a little bit to see which is good to read. The next one, Nothing But Holes, How to Know Where a Portal Goes Before Going, is it was found in the low importance section of the library. For those who weren't here at the beginning or have forgotten, the Merry Gentleman arranges this non-fiction library in order of importance. The books that he deems most important are over here. The books that he deems least important are over there. The Step into the Unknown university textbook style was somewhere in the middle. The Nothing But Holes was somewhere on the low side, and the Scientific Journal of Laurel Thurlocal was over in the high side. So we've got the low Nothing But Holes was a field guide that points out common features present around various portals, like wind around an air portal or feelings of dread around an abyss portal, etc. And then the Scientific Journal of Laurel Thurlocal is an experimental journal of a scientist who tried to create and close portals. He likely failed. It's ranked as high priority by the Merry Gentleman, and you're not sure exactly why. Which one are we wanting to open up and have a read of? Scientific sciencey science book? Alright, most people say in the third one there. So we'll start with the Scientific Journal and we'll go to the Nothing But Holes if we want to. Or if we have time. So opening up the Scientific Journal of Laurel Thurlocal. You take 20 on this book, just reading it as much as you can. However, there are limitations to taking 20. Taking 20 means that you can basically keep rolling until you get a 20. So you're guaranteed to get as good as you can get with your particular skills. You've got a +3 intelligence, which makes you quite intelligent. You are well above the average book smarts, well above the average intelligence. But you are not proficient in this particular topic. So even very, very smart people won't just jump into a PhD level textbook about things that aren't relative to the field that they're very intelligent in, you know. So you're good at reading it, you're good at understanding most of it, but there are certain parts of this that are definitely going to go over your head, even with taking 20, essentially. Taking 20 on a thesis is probably like taking 30 because it's so dull. Yeah, exactly. Let's see if it's just him asking for more funding. Yeah. Could we ask for a librarian to know what this title means? What, the Scientific Journal of Laurel Thurlocal? It's pretty obvious what the title means. Flip through it, see if there's pictures. So it's an experimental journal. Because it's written as a journal, it's not a textbook, it's not a thesis, and so it's not as dry as the other option would have been, the Step into the Unknown. So it keeps you interested a little bit more. You read this thing and you start to very quickly discover that there are a lot of experiments, outlined in great detail as to the setup and the delivery of how this gentleman was trying to create portals to other planes of existence. And over and over and over again, you just see him journaling how he failed to do so. It has not been like a peer-reviewed journal, so it's not like it's telling you why he failed. Some of the things, most of the experiments that lead on in the scientific method are him failing at one experiment and then trying to work out from that why he failed and changing his experiments slightly to continue with his experiments, and then that one fails as well. So he re-theorizes and it is It is a long journey to get through this book. It was an even longer journey for him because you can see the dates that were written, and it's taking him months and months and months to get through his experiments and stuff. You can see him starting to get like certain successes in that he can open up a thing that like gives him a feeling of joy, and he equates that to being like he's succeeded in opening up a portal to the Feywild, because Feywild is a plane of joy and a plane of like merriment and exuberance and happiness. But you also see that in the later entries after that, he starts to doubt himself about whether it opened a small temporary portal and then disappeared again, because that moment of joy could have been from the fact that he opened a portal in the first place and he finally succeeded at his task, albeit very briefly, before it collapsed and was unstable. So he's not sure exactly if it worked. So you start to go like, Jesus, this is a lot to read, and it's really like disheartening, even just as a reader, to see him trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing so much. So you start to flick forward, you start to skim read a little bit, you start to get through a little bit more of it, being like, surely it ends with him succeeding. So you flick to the back and see if he's succeeded, but you've completely missed context now, and so he's now on a completely different experiment, and you're not sure why. Does that mean that he gave up on his first one, or did he succeed? So you sort of flip back and forth in this book trying to find any mention of him actually success, like at the end of a chapter or something, with him saying, I finally did it. It's definitely self-published. Yes, definitely, much so. For some reason or another, you find that you remember that this was in the high importance section of the Merry Gentleman's library, so you assume that the Merry Gentleman has been interested in this methodology as well. Maybe this guy actually got closer than he thought he was, that sort of thing. Eventually you find that the guy never really succeeded in creating permanent, stable portals to other planes of existence, but he did discover that that a lot of information about portals that are very important to you to know as a Horizon Walker. Specifically, he learned about how important it is to have the right circumstances for a portal, particularly in a temporary one. The portals that spring up naturally in the world, the ones that just kind of occur from two planes crossing or crashing into each other, tend to be because the conditions are very similar on both planes at that time. So quite often weather plays a very big role in it. Humidity and relative humidity plays a very important role. All this sort of things, elevation, the lighting around the place, the sort of sounds that are happening around you as the portal's happening. There's a whole bunch of things, sensations that that need to be in the right amounts and the right conditions. Temporally, a lot of portals are that they only open at certain times, and you know that the planes, from reading this journal and others about planes so far, you know that the planes are circling each other in a way, not like physically, not like orbiting like an actual solar system, but in a kind of analogous way. The planes are sometimes closer, sometimes further away, epigeal and apogee and perigee. Apogee and perigee, like with real life with Mars and Earth, they're sometimes real close and sometimes they're not, just due to their respective orbits and such. The planes are kind of similar, and so some portals only open periodically, like once every month or so, or once every year, or only during a meteor swarm or something like this. There's all sorts of things go into it depending on which portal you're wanting and where in the material plane is, and oh boy is it a lot to take in. You do know, however, from that, one important piece of information that Apis takes away is that portals can be quite temperamental. Meaning, if you don't have the right circumstances for any of that stuff, it can really be quite easy to close a portal. Because if you find out what the things, the conditions are that can open a portal, especially a temporary one, if you change any of those conditions, the portal can close. And to close a portal permanently would just often be a case of changing the conditions permanently. So if it is a portal to the plane of air and you put it underwater, the portal will most likely close because there won't be a portal to the plane of air underwater. And likewise, if there is a portal to the demon plane of existence and you bless it with holy water or a blessing from a celestial of some kind, then the land around it will no longer be what is the word? Corrupted. And if the land around it is no longer corrupted, then it won't gel. It won't line up with the feeling of the portal on the other side of the plane. Both sides of the portal kind of need to feel the same for it to line up. That's where earth elementals came through in the earth. Yes. So that's the vital information that you finally get after about an hour of reading this very difficult journal of this particular scientist's journey into experimenting with portals. You discover that changing the conditions around a portal can be very vital to closing one permanently. Boil the hell out of several barrels of water and that's that. Yeah. About this time, the fairy comes over, Rue, the librarian fairy, and says, you asked me to... you didn't ask. You requested that I tell you when an hour is up. I'm telling you that approximately an hour has passed. And Rue gestures to a candle, one of these candles that have got marks written on it, so that it burns down at a very specific rate, and you can tell that it's a timekeeping candle. An hour has passed. Thank you, Rue. And I meant to thank people. It's so difficult to not thank people. You start to mumble to yourself and pack away the books that you've got. And it's time to go and meet the Merry Gentleman and Rakesh, I suppose. Any notes written in the part of the book not by the author but one of the readers? No. It's possible that Ultima's blessing can help with the demon portal. Maybe. Sounds like we need a cleric or a paladin, whatever knows how to bless things. Yes, and you probably need a cleric or a paladin to do the remove curse as well. Any cosmological map? Not in this book, no. It's a journal about making portals, not about anything to do with the planes. We did some homework for our training without being asked. What a good trainee we are. Yes, you did. So, heading out to Rakesh, yes? No? Anything on the way? We look for someone who can heal us without having owe us a favour before we meet with Rakesh. You can if you want. You're under no particular time limit to meet with Rakesh. What do you guys want to do? It's over to you. You're Apis, you're controlling them. You're controlling them. Request the librarian if there's an infirmary before we head out. Rue, is there an infirmary in the mansion? An infirmary? A place where people go to get healed or cured up? Oh yes, there is a chapel to Flunenshale in the rear of the mansion. Flunenshale, you would know probably is the goddess of healing, the goddess of medicine and healing and all that jazz. She's actually the one that gives you your short rest, not your short rest, your second wind ability. Right, and if I head there, I can get healed up. Presumably, if somebody is available, or if you pray on your own and get your prayers answered. Still pretty full. If he kicks us again, we'll just vomit on him. And under a time limit, but still better not to leave him waiting too long, as the library where the infirmary is. Yeah, you get information about where the chapel to Flunenshale is. Cure Wounds, been doing that for a while. Yep. All right. Is there a price to be paid in return for healing? Not that I'm aware of. We don't really use coins here. Yeah, but I mean, never mind. Alright, thumbs up, thumbs down. Put a thumbs up if you want to go to the infirmary chapel and see if you can get any healing before going off to training, since you're only just above half your hit points. You're exactly half actually. And put a thumbs down if you're like, nah, don't worry about it. Just go straight to the healing and go straight to the beating. It's not unanimous for sure, but there's definitely more yeses than nos. So you think about just going to Rakesh because you're like, he's going to beat the crap out of me anyway, so what does it matter if I go in like this? And you're like, nah, I want to give him my best. You ultimately decide like, nah, I want to show him what I can do, and I want to get the most out of training. So I want to go in as best as I can at the beginning. So you head down the downstairs and you ask around the staff like, where's this infirmary? Tell me where the infirmary is, rather than where is it. Tell me where the infirmary is, and they eventually you find your way to it. It's a small chapel with a wooden door. It's pretty nondescript. It's just got Flown and Shale's symbol on the plinth above the door. You open it up, and it's a relatively small room. It's about the size of this office, so maybe like a few meters by a few meters. On one side there is a little shrine looking thing to Flown and Shale, the goddess of healing, with her symbol, which is a goddess standing sort of T-pose, but her lower body is that of a trunk of a tree, and then her branches turn into arms, and she's got these like berries growing around her. You head into Flown and Shale's temple. There is nobody in there, chapel rather, and nobody is in there. There is a couple of pews, a couple of places to sit, and some cushions for sitting on the ground as well. And there is one bed, like a small stretcher-looking bed over on one side of the wall. So, I will have you roll a religion check to see if you know the first thing about how Flown and Shale likes to be prayed to. What do you know about Flown and Shale and her rituals, her expected methods of... Words are failing me. Words are failing me today. Her expected methods of showing... Can't think of the word I'm trying to think of. Oh well. Religion check. Apis. 5. 5 plus your religion modifier. Which is, you're not proficient in religion, so it'll just be a +3. That's an 8. Thumbs up, thumbs down real quick. Do you want to re-roll that with inspiration or lucky horseshoe? Those things down there underneath your character sheet, inspiration and lucky horseshoe, both give you a re-roll of a dice. Lucky Horseshoe is a once per day, comes back on a dawn, or comes back when you're here in the Feywild. It comes back whenever you want to recharge it, but it's just harder to recharge it if it's been not very long since the last time you recharged it. All right, most people saying no. There's definitely some saying yes, but no. Most people saying no. Just leave it with the 8. So with an 8 on religion, you sort of sit down, you look at Flown and Shale's shrine there, this large wooden carved statuette of this goddess of healing, and you think, how does she like to be prayed to? I'm not sure if I know. Try and think back to like going into any temples or chapels. Her places of worship are medicine houses and hospitals and things. You've never really had any broken bones or anything. You've never had reason to be around a lot of Flown and Shale acolytes, so you're not like, you know that she's a simple god that prefers like praying to like acts of service. Like some gods, like Ultimatum, prefer you to go out and hunt because he's a god of hunt, and so you hunt by showing you show your reverence by hunting. Flown and Shale is the goddess of healing, and she just prefers to be acknowledged and thanked in regular prayer. You're just not sure how they pray, so you just think, well, I mean, I'll just pray for something then and see what happens. We'll use high text here. You say, "O Flown and Shale, goddess divine, please hear this humble prayer of mine. Bring your healing power to me, and let your love and light set me free. With your gentle touch, let me feel a soothing balm that will help me heal. From every pain, every ache, every ill, may your healing energy fulfill. Restore my body, mind, and soul. Make me whole once again and whole." Let your grace and mercy shine, and bless me with health divine. I'm going to give you inspiration for that. You already had inspiration, so I'm just going to make that a reroll of your religion check there. That was a very good, very well written thing, high tech, very well done. Unfortunately, the dice do not agree. So 8 is what you got. 8 is what you get. So you say this lovely prayer, and you're not sure if Lunshale has heard you or not. But unbeknownst to you, your second wind has returned. It has not healed you any hit points because it wasn't well enough for that, but you did have a lovely prayer, and she did enjoy that enough to give you a second wind at the very least. You could pray while thinking back on the peaceful view we had while learning about second wind in our dreams. Yeah, you think about that. You think about what you got from her, and eventually you stand up. Can we eat one of the berries? One of the berries that's on her statue, it's just carved out of wood. It's not real berries. You do know that Flonanshale is thought to be the goddess of good berries and flonanberries, which are one of the primary ingredients for making potions of healing. Times it approximately in the day. Very difficult to tell because they don't keep time in the same way. It is a perpetually twilight realm where, part of the world that you're in anyway, where you are currently in the morning twilight. You're in the early morning. The sun is locked in the sky. It feels, from how long you've been awake and doing things, it feels about 6 o'clock in the evening or so. You've had a decently busy day. Should we leave our use our last first level spell slot for Cure Wounds? You've got first level spell slot left, and you've got a second level spell slot left, and you're about to go out and train with a centaur who has beaten you to unconsciousness before, and then when you hit unconsciousness, he had one of the fairies of the forest wake you up, and then he said that was a lesson to you essentially. You don't know what the training's going to be. You don't know what your spell slots are going to be yet. So you decide, if that's the healing I'm going to get, that's the healing I'm going to get. So be it. You've prayed to her, and the gods aren't tools to be used at your whim. They will answer you when it feels like they should answer you. So you head back out of the chapel. You head out of the house, and you head across the lawn to the towards where you fought Rakesh before. As you're arriving towards Rakesh, he's speaking with a little sprite on his shoulder. He's just sort of having a bit of a conversation, bit of a discussion with him as you're approaching. He sees you come in, and then he goes, and he says something to him, and the sprite takes off, flies past you, sort of fly by, towards the house, the mansion. You arrive at Rakesh, right? What's on the cards today? You gonna beat me up again? And I'll do your little stretches. And he goes, sort of, yes. A little bit of a change. Try and get his voice right. I think he was deep and authoritative. He goes, sort of, yes. There's been a bit of a change. Ordval wishes to be present for your training tonight. He said that he may be present for the rest of your training for the week. Which is very exciting. So you're going to be working hard, but you're also going to be undergoing some sort of an extra challenge, a task of some kind for the Lord. I'm not sure exactly. He said that he would explain when he gets here. And just like that, the merry gentleman is there. You're not sure if he apparated or if he just ran here at speeds that were hard for you to even tell he was coming, or whether he came up out of the ground. All you know is the next moment, he is right there behind you. And in his regular green suit with his brown top hat on, you can see that he has not rolled up any sleeves or anything. It looks like he's not ready for a fight. He's just as he is. And he says, well then, let's get started. How did you do that? He goes, I can get around my own property quickly enough. Apis, your training is going to take a little bit of a different tangent for me. I still wish you to train hard with Rakesh, but I've decided that your lack of certain taste, your lack of certain taste of blood. This is going to come across differently in Sylvan. What am I trying to say? Your blood is not of this plane, is what I'm trying to say. As such, you have started to demonstrate certain afflictions. What do you mean? Just kind of holds up his hand. The very nature of you being on this plane has led to you becoming charmed by it. I don't feel like I'm... You don't recognize it yet. I recognize the subtleties in your behaviors. There are certain ways that you have become charmed by the plane, and it's completely normal for people from your plane of existence. Not only that, but I saw the way that you acted at dinner when it came to the Mirang, and your dancing with can't remember her name now. Kira? It wasn't Kira, was it? Kiresha? The wild woman. Can't remember what his name for her is. I saw the way you danced with Kiresha. You were charmed, as it were. So you're saying we're like plane drunk? Sort of, yes. It's a good way of putting it, I suppose. You are drunk on the plane of existence that you find yourself on now, which is understandable for your people. The way that you danced showed that you were not as strong-willed, perhaps, as I need you to be. Why do you need me? The time for questions is not now. You're going to start with fighting Rakesh. However, there's going to be another gentleman joining us for the fight. This gentleman is going to be charming you during the fight, and it's your task to determine how one counters such a charm. There are multiple ways of a creature becoming enchanted in this world. Many creatures that can do it to you, and they do it in different ways. I need you to learn how to avoid certain charms. Right? Claps his hand, and just in the way that he appeared, there's another gentleman, as if he's been there the whole time, just like behind you on the side. You see he looks an awful lot like Dopnash was, but like a much younger version, a much more athletic version. He is a satyr. He's got the long horns out to the side that kind of curl backwards, ram's horn styles. He's got a goatee. He's got a nose ring. He's a very handsome-looking gentleman with a very rugged, kind of a well-cut face. He's currently topless with a very athletic build to his body, very hairy and furry chest to his person, and he's got like a tasteful sort of modesty belt on, essentially. And that is just a wrap around his waist, hiding the delineation between his more human-looking upper torso and his fawn-like legs, his goat-like legs for his satyr body. He has panpipes in his hand, and as soon as you see him, he sort of does this half bow, keeping his eyes on you, gives a little wink, and starts to play. Kyrios, that's it. Thank you, Kyrios, I think. Kyrios. Apis. I'm not going to roll your initiative for the fight section because we've already fought Rakesh. I don't want to overdo things by just repeating things as we go. But as you're fighting Rakesh, as he starts to play panpipes, the Rakesh draws his weapons and starts to attack. You draw a weapon out as well, and you start to defend yourself against Rakesh. But at the same time, the satyr is trying to charm you. So what this is going to be is essentially a series of challenges of you learning how to avoid certain charms from certain creatures on the plane of existence that you find yourself on, the Gaiate, the Feywild. So what do? As you're fighting Rakesh, he's definitely getting the upper hand of you because Rakesh is the better fighter. So on average, the rolls will come out in Rakesh's favour. So he's getting the upper hand of you, and he's kind of like pushing. He's using some more like not dirty tactics, but like more advanced tactics. He's not just sword play, but he's like kicking you with his front hooves, or he's like trying to grapple you while he strikes and things. He's throwing in a little bit more of his advanced tactics of fighting. What do you do with the charm situation? Hum our own tune in our head so that we can't hear it. That's good. Make atonal, tritonal screeching noises as we go to try and counter the sound of the pipes. Very good. Find a splinter, put it in our hand to distract ourselves from the charm effect using the pain. That's actually very clever as well. Try and like cut down on ourselves, like hurt ourselves a little bit. We plug our ears with mud or banana or grass or bandana. I read that as banana. I was like, mud or a banana or grass, etc. to mute the sound. I was like, what are you going to... One of these things is not like the others. Plug our ears with a banana. Plug our ears to not hear the things. All right. So as you try these things, let's roll to see how they go. How we go on with it. Merry Gentleman testing Apis' ability to withstand charms. Here we go. All right. Let's roll you a Wisdom saving throw. That's a 9. 9 plus your wisdom is not enough. So once or twice you get kicked by Rakesh, not seeing where he was because you were going in for an attack, and then all of a sudden, you get kicked, and you're like facing a different direction than you thought. It's like you're having what do they call them? Fugue states. It's like you're coming in and out of amnesia. You're forgetting certain like snippets. It's like you're buffering in real life or lagging. There's like a couple of frames missing from your life, and you realize that you keep getting charmed by the satyr's music and then getting kicked out of it because every time you take pain, you drop the charm, and that's part of why the Merry Gentleman has set up the charm thing alongside your training with Rakesh, because you're going to be getting hurt a lot with Rakesh. As you are taking damage, by the way, as Rakesh is actually coming through with swords and cutting you and stuff, he's not taking you to 0 because every time he's actually hitting you, the fairies are nearby curing and using pixie dust to try and like heal up wounds and stuff. So you're being healed as you're fighting rather than taking you down to 0 now, because the Merry Gentleman needs you awake for this. So he can't afford to have you dropping and getting back up. So the pixies are healing as you go. So the wisdom save is not great. You keep going in and out. So you start to try some of these these other things. You get kicked back by Rakesh and you scramble down for something on the ground. You find a bit of a thorny branch and you have that in your hand as you're fighting, and you're sort of constantly squeezing that, and that helps for a little bit. But every so often something will distract you from doing so, like a big attack will come in from above and you go up to block it, and naturally you'll put your hand up against the other side of your sword to try and give yourself extra, and you'll drop the thing that you were holding, and then at that point you're not taking damage anymore. So it's not an ongoing, it's not a permanent thing to help. It seems like that's not the thing that the Merry Gentleman's wanting you to learn about this particular one. So let's roll another check here. See how well the rest of the fight goes. Nat 20, there it is. So it doesn't take you very long. It doesn't take you very long to discover. Yell at the satyr, hey buddy, how's a goblin like a feather quill, and try and distract him with an impossible riddle. That's very clever. So it doesn't take you very long to discover what the Merry Gentleman is trying to get you to do with regards to satyr charming is something not too dissimilar to that riddle. You think about distracting the satyr from playing his panpipes, and then you realize it's the music that he's playing that's charming me. It's the panpipes. The panpipes are the source of the charm. So I can try my best to block my ears, but it's hard to do that while also fighting. Even if you like block it with a bandana, you're not actually, like, I can still hear myself. Like, you can still hear things. It's just muffled. So it's still going to be charming. It might give you advantage on it, but it's not going to stop it entirely. The panpipes, however, are the permanent source of the charm. So getting the panpipes off of him. So you do like a big sweeping attack, and you try and like push Rakesh back, or like try and get him onto the back foot just long enough for you to disengage, rush over to the satyr and try and grab the pipes from him. And as soon as you go down to like strike the satyr, he kind of jumps back, stops playing for a second, and kind of defends him, gets himself into a defensive stance. You do this to sort of feint it, and then you reach out and try and grab the pipes. You tussle with him for a bit, but eventually you get the pipes off of him, and the Merry Gentleman calls it and says, very good, very good. You're learning quickly, Apis. You're very intelligent. I've said this before, I'll say it again. You're a very smart person. I I think this is part of what is going to answer your question for you. What is most vital for you to know? You need to know how to avoid the temptations of creatures of various planes, and I think it's smart that we start with the Gaiate. Vital information will be over the next few days to come back here around the same time. We're going to have a little bit of a train. There are a few other creatures that I want to test you on. Your job will be to discover what the source of their charm is and how one will deal with such a thing. I think that's enough for tonight, Rakesh. And you're like, we've only just started. And the Red Gentleman says, we've been at this for 2 hours. You're like, I've been going like 20 minutes. And he says, you've spent the majority of the time charmed. Oh, right, well, thank you. And you kind of look down and you're covered in cuts and bruises and there's like 4 different like exhausted fairies around you, like good, glad you're awake. Rakesh sort of stows his sword, also just like dripping in sweat. Good. Same time tomorrow. And then Rakesh kind of trots off into the forest and leaves you to go to sleep back in the Merry Gentleman's place. So, over the next week, the Merry Gentleman is going to train you with Rakesh in sword fighting, because you're training up in second level of fighter, using your action surge at the same time, and then also training you with different creatures that charm you. During the days, you'll have some time to do some downtime stuff, and I've got a couple of things planned as well. But during the evenings, you'll be doing some more of this stuff. So the next cycle, you go back to your room in the Merry Gentleman's abode, and you have a long rest. You exhausted, collapse, and asleep. Mel catches up with you in the morning, and tells you about how her evening went. It was delicious, and she had a lot of nectar kept being brought out to her. She actually got to meet another giant bee. Who was called something beginning with a B. Does that make sense? Bobby. Bobby the bee. There's a giant bee called Bobby that's just a native to this plane that was brought in. It was relatively close by. Just kind of he's not really part of Merry Gentleman's staff or anything, but he just lives in the forest nearby, and everybody gets along with Bobby. And Mel got to meet Bobby and have company with somebody who's more like herself. Had a lovely night. How much weight has Mel gained? Yeah, she's fine, huge. She's been scoffing down all sorts of flowers and stuff. Now she's starting to slow down a little because she's got a bit of a bee hangover the next morning, so she's slowing herself down on the flowers a little bit. Is she battle improved? She will be. So she, as Apis levels up, Mel levels up as well. So during this week, Mel, as you're doing your training, Mel is off doing her training as well. She actually gains the evasion feat at this level, meaning that when she makes a dexterity saving throw, she takes no damage if she succeeds, and only half damage if she fails. So that's what she's kind of training in. Bobby is going to be her trainer. She's going to be learning from him how to move a little faster when there's dangers around, when there's dangers afoot. Keep a sharp eye when Bobby is around, in case it's Bobby in disguise. Yeah, I forgot that I'd already used Bobby. Yeah, it's not Bobby in disguise. It's just a giant bee called Bobby. Ask Rakesh if our short sword's the best style of melee sword, as he learns about our skill, strength, dex throughout the week. Yeah. During the day on this day, then you go to Rakesh during the day before training and say like, hey, I'm just thinking, like, I'm not the strongest, and it seems like I'm putting a lot of work into swinging this sword. Is there like a better sword that I'd be better with? And he says, there are many different types of sword. I think with your skill set, you're much lither than you are strong, much more nimble than you are strong. And I think a rapier or a fencing sword might suit you better. Smaller swords such as daggers and short swords might be better, but your longsword can do well. And if you were to train your strength a little better, if you were to do some weight training, muscle training, you could get better at it. But for your current skill set, I think you'd find yourself more efficiently using something that's a little bit more nimble. But it's really up to you. In mechanical terms, yes, if you used a sword that would be dexterity based, like a rapier, any sword that has the versatile tag means, sorry, not the versatile, the finesse. Any sword that has the finesse tag means that you can use either strength or dex for it, and so you'd be using a +3 instead of a +1. What else are we doing during the day before the thing? We're not going to act out individual scenes, but like as a general rule, what are we doing during the day? Are we going to try and learn about were curses, try and learn about portals, try and learn about whatever? What are we doing during the day before our what are we doing as downtime essentially before our training in the evenings? Maps, sure. You head to the library during the day and read about map books. Learn about the maps. Let's have a look. There's one called Hiking the Wilds, the best trails in the Feywild. It has sections on each of the Feywild regions. Beginning of each of the chapters have an overall map with trails labelled, following a map folded up by a page for each trail, including beasts and features likely to be encountered on that trail on the way. Here's the information that you learn from the map book without going too much into detail about it. I haven't finished painting it yet, but here's a globe that I'm making of the world of Rin, the planet that you're on, my homebrew world, and it is the same planet layout as the Feywild world that you're in as well. It's the same layout, but a smaller scale in the Feywild. So there is a region over here called Azoria. Azoria in the Feywild is the equivalent of Changji in the material plane, which is my China equivalent area, or my East Asian equivalent area. You've got the and the autumn scent. The map book also tells you about which of the archfays reside over which one. So the autumn scent resides over Azoria, which is the equivalent of Changji. The blue tune resides over Akarin. Akarin is the equivalent of Radi Soab, which is the equivalent of the Middle East. The Cold Lady resides over Kitatai. Kitatai is Tiandra, which is the Antarctica. The Deep Beyond resides over Qual, which is the oceans, just the water, and it's a region called Qual in the Feywild. The Fruity Fellow resides over Yaleo. Yaleo is the equivalent of these islands here, which is sort of Southeast Asia. The Husk resides over Hataha. Hataha is this one here. This one here, which is the equivalent of Barunshka, which is my Russian continent. The Jester resides over Bwakala. Bwakala is the equivalent of Triokoksha, which is my African continent. The Merry Gentleman resides over Avalon, which you already knew, which is the equivalent of Peor in the material plane, and is the equivalent of Europe. The Night Owl resides over Rio Teapo. Rio Teapo is the equivalent of Remkana and Relatea, which is my Pacific Islands continents. The Sporian resides over Mirisada. Mirisada is the equivalent of Novatiand in the material plane, which is up here, and it is the equivalent of North America in the real world. The Wild Woman resides over Donga, which is here, right in the middle, and that's Mayaka, which is the equivalent of South America. And then the Unknown, the final one of the Archfey, the Unknown resides over a region called Incon. Incon does not have an applicable equivalent on the material plane. It's the only one that doesn't. And people, even in the Gaiate, even in the Feywild, nobody knows. Nobody knows where Incon is. It's sort of like it's a state of mind rather than a place. It's very peculiar, and it's part of why she's called the Unknown. So that was super useful and not at all boring and dry for all of you to sit and listen to, I'm sure. Cool. That's the 12. That's the 12 Archfey. Their gender. There are 4 that identifies male, 4 that identifies female, and 4 that identifies non-binary. And then the regions that they look after and their equivalent in the material plane. And then eventually when I get around to it, I'm going to get some acrylic paint and finish off that planet, and then I'll put pictures of it so you'll know the planet that we're on. So I'll say that you do that and the Rakesh thing during this day. You learn about the different maps of the world. If you need to reference a particular place in the world, I'll just refer back to the map book and say, yeah, you know where it is because you read the map book. So just remind me that you've read a map book if you need to know where anything is in the Feywild plane. Obviously, you don't know everything about everything, but it'll give you advantage on the roll or something like that. In the evening, it comes to in the evening you have dinner, which is not a huge 9-course meal affair anymore. It is like presented to you in the dining hall. You don't dine with the merry gentleman. He's much too busy to be dining with you every day. He's got his own shit to be doing, especially now that he's on lockdown with the rest of the Archfey. But you do dine occasionally with other members of the staff and things like that. Add the map to your cloak. Perfect. Yeah. So you get the cloak out. You get your cloak of many fashions, which is something that you can, while you're wearing it, you can make it look like whatever you want it to look like. Your cloak currently is a map of the Lannis Woods. Now that you've liberated the people of the Lannis Woods from Luciferique, you don't really need this map anymore. So you lay it down. You get the map book out of the map of where you're going to be going. The Merry Gentleman will help you to give you a map of the Drenvale forest, and you'll put the cloak back on. You'll think about the map. You'll make your cloak look like the area that you're going to be teleporting back to when the Merry Gentleman's done with you here in the Feywild, because that's one of the things that happened when we returned to the material plane. Right. That evening, after dinner, you head out to the training grounds, and the Merry Gentleman is there, watching and waiting and fighting with you essentially. And as you train with Rakesh, fighting with him, the Merry Gentleman conjures an who's going to be next? The Merry Gentleman conjures an old woman who is very hag-like, it seems. This hag, this lovely old woman, this lovely polite old woman, that's just like, you're not sure exactly what she's doing here because she's just there to observe, it seems. At first, it takes you a little while to realise that she's even like the thing that the Merry Gentleman has conjured or summoned rather, not conjured. He's brought her from somewhere else. You don't even realise that she's the thing like the satyr was the night before. And so at first she's like asking you questions like, what's going on here then? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And she's basically tricking you into making deals with her through your verbal agreements and stuff. And it takes a while for you to notice that and have to realise what it is she's doing, and the fact that she's probably a hag and she's charming you with her abilities. So, what are you doing? So this old woman you eventually discover during the fight with Rakesh. You discover that you're again losing time, losing memories, losing your faculties as to what's going on for you, and you realise there's something charming. The Merry Gentleman didn't even bring anybody to charm me. There's just the fairies. There's the Rakesh. There's Merry Gentleman. There's this old woman that he's brought. The old woman's doing it. How is she charming me? Takes a few more rounds of you like, how is she doing it? How is she charming me? And you realise that she's basically she's doing it through her words. She's asking you questions and getting you to agree to things and stuff like that. So what do you do? How do you avoid this specific charm of an old hag? Can we try and ignore her, like shun her? You could try that. Feel like we'd pick this one up quickly because we're wary of talking and sharing information with people here, so we'd stop answering questions. Put an arrow in her throat. That'd do it. Wondered if it was her scent. Ignore her, don't answer her. Yawn through the nose, makes a lot of noise, and your breath echoes through the skull, blocking out a lot of noise. Hippus is just doing that as the fighting. Rakesh is like, really? Is it worth not being charmed if you're going to look like that for the whole time while you're walking around in this plane of existence? Try to work in a mayhaps. Very good. Question does not always require an answer. Looks like you could give it You look like you could do with some help. Give her a silver. Interesting. Answer every question with another question. All right. So I'm going to give you an intelligence saving throw here because you're intelligently trying to save yourself the hassle of answering her questions. I'm going to give you advantage because, as you've mentioned, Apis has been particularly wary about answering questions and all sorts of other stuff in your time here. So you are already attuned to this particular form of avoiding being charmed or avoiding getting into anything. Nat 1 or a 12. A 12 plus your intelligence saving throw is a 3. That's a 15 total. You, as you're fighting, you realize pretty quickly with this one what's going on and how to avoid it. It's relatively simple to avoid being charmed by a hag. Maybe not so simple to avoid being attacked, eaten, or manipulated by a hag, but avoiding their charm is relatively easy. All you need to do is avoid making a deal with them or accepting any kind of hospitality from them. Once or twice after you've realized I need to stop answering their questions, I need to stop making any deals, you're like beaten down or whatever and fallen to the ground, and she'll like reach out and give you a hand and like offer you a hand up, and then you'll lose a moment of your time after that because you've technically accepted some hospitality from her, and so you owe her, and so she recalls that favor by charming you, which is one of the things that they can do. Anytime you owe somebody a thing in the Feywild, one of the ways that they can get that back is by using the charm effect on you or whatever. So She pulls you to your feet and then charms you, or you'll have a cut across your brow from Rakesh, and like a cloth will come out, and without thinking you'll just kind of take it and wipe the blood out of your eyes, and doing that's accepting hospitality, stuff like that. No soliciting sign around your neck. Yeah. Eventually you realize what's happening and you stop accepting hospitality. You stop making deals. You stop sort of answering her questions, things like that. And the Merry Gentleman's very impressed. You only fought for about 40 minutes or so this time with it before you kind of got the hang of it and just completely avoided her. She's very happy with how exciting this has all been, and you see her form kind of shift from that of a lovely old lady, like an old grandma sort of person, to like this her real form of this ugly twisted hag with this horrible face and everything. And the Merry Gentleman says, "You can leave now." I gave her a name somewhere. What was it? "You can leave now," says he. And she says, "I can." And he says, "Leave." And she goes, "This was fun, Kurapira. I hope you'll keep me in mind for future." And he goes, "I always do, Sissy. I always have you in my mind." She says, Good. And then she turns around and starts to walk off, and her legs become like chicken legs as she walks. And then she just walks off into the forest. The Merry Gentleman takes you aside and says, "She may have been a relatively easy one for you to realise how she was charming you, but in the wild, in the real life, when you encounter hags, they are not as easily discerned what they are and what they may be doing to one's mind. They also, unlike Ceci during this fight, are not usually under the direct guidance and observation of someone such as myself, and so what they will be doing to you is much more than just charming." I didn't agree to anything that I shouldn't have while I was charmed. No, I was here to make sure that all she was doing with her end of the bargain was charming you at my discretion. Right. If Edith turns out to be a hag, the salt will be real. Private thoughts reflecting on the day in bed. Anyone in the Merry Gentleman summons after this instantly pegged as lightly source of our charm training. That's 2 for 2 now. We need to be on high alert for anything summoned from now on. And we don't have any remaining debts to her? No. All debts are cancelled. Her ultimate debt was to me in this moment, and she was repaying that debt tonight. Right. So you head to bed. The next day, what do you want to do with your day? You've got your map book. Oh, I'll tell you what, actually, this is one of the ones that I will do for you. During the day, let's see, who would it be? a dryad. I think one of the dryads from the grove. It's not Hellenius, but it's one of the fellow dryads from that grove. Is brought to you and says, "We require your attention," and you spend the day with them, learning a little bit about potion making. In particular, they teach you a little bit about the differences of Feywild plants from regular plants and how to differentiate them. They've recognized that you have a potion book on your person. You don't know exactly how they know that, but nothing really surprises you anymore. Things like personal privacy and people going through your belongings doesn't really surprise you that maybe that's what happened here at some point while you've been asleep. Who knows? Or maybe they've been watching you or whatever. For one reason or another, they know that you have a book on potions and a book on plants as well. And therefore you have some sort of an interest in that. And you spend the day working with these Dryad Grove to understand potion making, the basics of it, to understand how one brews. You also have a herbalism kit on you, yes. And they work with you on that. So a lot of your notes in your herbalism book and things, when you got back to the material plane, would have come from today. You've been taking notes a lot. Also in your inventory when you got back to the material plane was some potion ingredients looking dried herb looking things, and that's come from today as well. They give you a bunch of dried herbs and stuff. Can I ask the Dryad lady about the best wood for panpipes while we work? Sure can, yeah. You ask about the Dryad. Is there a better wood for making panpipes out of? And she says, yes, there's a lot of different woods that would work for different effects. It depends on exactly what you're wanting from your panpipes. Is it you're wanting an assistance with musicality? You're wanting a wood that is easier for enchanting later? Are you looking for a type of wood that deadens the sound for all but those who you intend to hear it? Depends on your purpose. There is a lot of different woods that I could suggest. There is a certain type of wood that is, what's the name of that one that the earworms were around? I'm sure I'll find earworm. I don't remember the name of the tree. Hushbrush, thank you, Cinderfingers. She goes, there is a certain tree in the Feywild known as the Hushbrush. It has a property of being rather deadening on sound, which one might think is not right for instruments, but it can be useful for removing unwanted sounds from the pipes and only delivering the tune, the exact tones that you are trying to do. It removes sort of unnecessary vibrational sounds or the extra sort of tones that can creep in. It can also be used for as a basis for then enchanting with things like horns of alarm, silent alarm, things like that. Is there a wood that would be, better luck playing them? So like make you a better player? I mean, that's really down to skill. I just really want ones that work properly. I think mine might be jinxed to prank me. Perhaps. Could I trade some of this wood in return for telling you a story? I don't have some of this wood myself, but you could harvest it from hushbrush trees. Just be careful of earworms. You speaking of earworms, you get to the evening of this particular day, and in your fight with the merry gentleman, you fight with Rakesh, and you're training this Rakesh. You see a very familiar-looking dragon creature that is in the fight with you, and it is singing as you start to fight. What do you do? How do you avoid the charming effect of an earworm? You have encountered earworms before and been affected by them, but how does one go about avoiding the effect? What is it about the earworm that is making you charmed? Whip out a panpipes work last time, sort of. Oh, not this again. Same thing we did last time, I don't remember what it was. Take a nat one on panpipes, I'll play the tune that attracted it to us. Make loud disharmonic sounds to scare it off. Very good. Redal, you're touching onto the right idea, so what I am going to do is roll you an intelligence saving throw to see if you remember what it was that might scare this thing off. I'm going to give you advantage because you have dealt with it before. That's a nat 2 or a nat 11. 11 plus 3 is 14, so not quite as good as yesterday, but very close. Dissonance to the song is what you want, Jay, as Redal and Jay have touched on there. Or Tree of Dave has also said, singing an anti-song. What you need to do with earworms, as you eventually remember, is do not let yourself harmonize. Not only with music, not only with the sounds that you're making, but also in your movement and your rhythm. Because the earworms, as you remember, they create their music as they're flying. They've got these huge long frills down the sides of them. They look almost snake-like as dragons. And they've got this big resonant head that looks like a sort of spade shovel shaped. And they've got these frills that come down from the jawline, as it were, of this snake. And these things vibrate, and that's like the vibrating strings. They've also got this deep bass kind of sound that they can make within the big resonant head. So they're making music, but they're also dancing to that music through the air as they fly. So if you harmonize with the earworms in music, movement, or rhythm, that's how they get you. That's how they end up charming you into it. So as long as you avoid that, Apis, remembering this, you fight with Rakesh, and as you're fighting, you're trying to avoid getting into any kind of a rhythm as you're fighting. You're not going 1, 2, 1, 2, because as soon as you get into a rhythm, the earworm can hear that rhythm and then harmonize with you, and then you've harmonized together. So every time the earworm is trying to change to harmonize with you, you have to change up your rhythm, your movement. No muscle memory, yeah. If it moves smoothly, you got to stomp your feet in strong offbeat patterns. Exactly, you got it. So it doesn't take very long this time. You are training with Rakesh. You're really getting exhausted with Rakesh because obviously just as much as you're training the charm, the Rakesh is also training you pretty hard with his training as well. He's upping his game every day. He is introducing more and more of his more advanced techniques, more fainting techniques, or more like lunging techniques, or all sorts of tripping techniques, all sorts of things to try and get the upper hand. And so you're doing that while also walk without rhythm and won't attract the worms. Nice. Very good. The next day. What do you do during the next day? You have now trained against a satyr, a hag, and an earworm. You ask the merry gentleman like how much more of this, and he says the rest of the week. And you say, time doesn't really pass here much. How much more have we got? And he says, about 3 days. So you've got about 3 more days of this. So what do you do the next day, during the day? Read about charms, sources, and counters. Sure, you read about charms, sources, and counters during the day, and that'll give you advantage on the evening's thing. So you go up to the library, you ask the fays about the fairies about like charms and how charms are encountered and things. You find a book by an elf adventurer, a ranger of sorts, who hunted down fairies back on the material plane and end up in the Feywild and turned their life around, like turned their perspective around about fairies, and realized that they're not inherently evil. They're just mercurial and flighty, and so they've documented all sorts of different fairy creatures before returning to the material plane, and trying to educate other people on like, hey, I used to hate them, I used to hunt them and kill them, but now I realized what they're not evil, they're just bastards. So yeah, using this book as a way of like demonstrating what people are. So there you go. After one of these training sessions, if you have any, how about a wager, an archery contest? If I win, you give me a suitable weapon. If I win, I won't complain a single time during the next training. He's a Fey. Fey tend to like wagers, but he's a centaur. They're not quite as mercurial and fun like that. Let's give it a percentage chance of him going for that wager. He's not. No, he's not interested in that wager. Not only because you didn't come out of the Feywild with a rapier in hand, so I can't exactly retcon that now and say that you've got a rapier when you didn't have one before. So you'll have to get yourself a rapier when you return to the material plane if you want it. Anyway, so you spend most of the day reading about that, and in the next evening during this training session, you are brought to you meet an Eladrin, much like Dale, it seems. Much like Dale, only not with autumn colours. It seems like they have got quite spring colours. They've got budding, blooming flowers and things on them that remind you of springtime. They're much more green and lively. the reds and oranges and browns of Dale's attire. This one seems to be mostly female identifying, and greets you and says, "I'm Taran. I'll be charming you today." And you're like, "Okay, straight to the point. Let's go. Can we train with one on loan, as it were?" Sure. I mean, doesn't affect me at all. So yeah, you borrow a rapier for the training session with Rakesh. And you learn how to, because I did mention, like, at the start of this thing, you're not just training with one weapon. Rakesh has got plans to train you with a bunch of stuff, because as a fighter you are now proficient in all weapons. As a ranger you should have been, theoretically, so you should be good with all weapons. But Rakesh is making sure to put that to the test. So you are training with a rapier, you're training with something a little bit more fencing sword style, and as you are training, Taran is trying to charm you. This one is a little tougher for you, because you're not exactly sure how she's doing it. She's not singing. She's not making deals with you like a hag was. She's not harmonizing with your movement. She's just kind of watching, moving around the battlefield, staying close to you as you fight, like just making sure that she's there. Every so often you will just lose a few moments here and there of your time with Rakesh as he's kicking the crap out of you and you fall to the ground. What do we feel? Do we smell anything different? Pollens and pheromones, maybe. Alright, let's see if you can smell anything. Alright, let's go with a perception check for your smell perception, and I'm going to give you advantage because you read the book on shams today. A 12 or a nat 20. You do smell something a little different, and not just the smell, but you've got that kind of a little bit stuffy sensation of like hay fever, and you have this sensation that there is indeed like pollens and pheromones in the air. So well done for, who was it, Myth? You got bang on. That's pretty much how the Eladrins do it. Eladrins are about proximity. If you are close enough to them, they will be able to exude this kind of aura, which is basically pheromones and pollen. Put a banana in our nose. Yeah. And so basically you just have to be close proximity to them in order to get charmed by them. So your way to avoid being charmed by Eladrin is to put several feet between you and them. And as soon as you remember that from your books, as soon as you realize that you're kind of smelling this sweetness in the air, you feel yourself wanting to be closer to her. You feel like you're drawn to her. You feel like you just kind of have that longing of, not exactly like companionship longing. You just want to be with them. You want to be close to them, and you feel yourself kind of going towards them in the fight. You're like you're putting yourself between them and Rakesh, and you're coming over to them a little bit more when you need a breather from Rakesh. And when you realize you're doing that, you think, oh, that's what they're doing. The charm is to try and get you closer to them so that they can keep you charmed. And so, whoa, you kind of just like push them away a little bit, and you start fighting away from them. You overcome your own feelings of wanting to go towards them, like after a breakup, and you're like, I really love them, I want to go to them, but like, oh, I can't. And you have to use your own willpower to be like, I can't be with them right now. I have to be over here. It's what's good for me. And the longer you spend away from them, the easier that lessens, until eventually you realize I've got no desire to be next to them. That said, she is actually like trying to follow you. She's trying to get closer to you, and you're trying to get away from her. It's a very fun game almost. Incidentally, sidebar: if you haven't played that game in real life, it's actually pretty fun. It was a drama game that I played at drama school, a movement game thing where it works best with quite a lot of people. In secret, you pick two people, one of whom in the room. So there's like 20 people in the room or whatever. You pick two people at random. One of whom you have to stay as far away from as possible, and the other one you have to get as close to as possible. And because it's all picked at random and at secret, you're bound to have like chains of people where I have to get close to you, and you want to get close to that person, but that person's trying to get far away from me as possible. So you end up like moving around, and you just like, go! And you just start moving around the room, and everybody's like, and eventually you're trying to work out who is it that's trying to get away from me and stuff like that. It's actually a really fun little game to try to sort of be bonding as a group. It's like a good theatre game. She's basically playing that with you. You're trying to get as far away from her as possible. She's trying to get as close to you as possible, while fighting Rakesh. Eventually, it becomes very clear to the merry gentleman that hey, you've obviously worked out what it is that she does. You've obviously worked out what it is that Eladrins do in general and how to avoid getting charmed by an Eladrin. Stay away from them. Get an aromatic flower and rub it under her nose. Yeah, just closing your nose whenever she's getting closer, bringing up, sniffing your own BO from fighting with Rakesh for this whole time. Just stuff your own nose into your own armpit as you're fighting. You'd be like, ooh, that'll block it. Very good. The next day, one for you, one for me style. The next day, the merry gentleman comes to you during the day before the fight, and this is the first time you've seen him during the day in a while. The next day comes to you and asks you for your dice box. Floating along beside him is your best friend, your favourite creature in the whole world, Bobby, aka the little shit, a cherub-like fairyman of about a couple of feet tall and chubby nature, floating alongside the merry gentleman. And the merry gentleman says, "I understand from Bobby that you received a gift recently, and you may not have realised it is a gift. It seems the merry gentleman is quite harrowed and quite harrowed might not be the right word. He's quite tired. You can tell he's quite exhausted just from his sort of demeanour. He's not quite as merry looking. He's obviously been very busy every day that you haven't seen him." "Hello, Bobby. Always lovely to spend time with you."
"Thank you. I could say the same to you. I'm not going to, but I could."
Shut up, Bobby. "Yes, sir." "Are you alright?" "I'm fine, yes. The dice. Could I see them?" Of course. You take them out. You've got a little box of dice. You can see them below me in the inventory here. Bone dice. You take out your bone dice, which are divinatory dice. For those who don't know, if you're relatively new to Switch Tales, they're made of centaur bone, it seems. And every day you can ask them a question, and they will answer correctly the first time. They will answer a yes/no question with truth, if they know the answer to it, it seems. If you ask them more than one question a day, there is an increasing chance that they will just give you a randomized answer. So there's some bone dice, and on the bone dice box it says Bobby in Sylvan. It says Bobby's name, the little shit. "Tell me, do using these dice have any consequences?" And the original says, "Define consequences." And he flicks the box open and starts to rummage through the dice with his long copper fingers. "Like, if I ask them a question, do I owe the person who answers me a question?" "Oh, no." "Do I owe them anything?" "No, they're just yours to use as you wish." "Do they take a piece of my soul or my life?" Or nothing like that, Apis. No, these are dice to help my... I suppose not my champions anymore. They're dice that I give out to help the people who help me. And who's providing the answers to these questions? I suppose I am, in a way. You're answering the questions? Yes, not directly. It's not like when you ask the dice a question, I get the question, and then I have to respond to tell the dice how to roll. It's not. I was the one who created the dice, and as such, my knowledge and my skills and my abilities goes into answering the questions. Will they still work with your link to your champions being severed? They're your dice, Apis. You're not one of my champions. You've made that clear with your refusal of my contract. So they should still work. And I can ask them whatever I want without consequence. I mean, everything has consequence, Apis. How unreliable are the answers after the first one? It depends on a lot of factors. Usually somewhere around 1.25. There's usually like a 1 in 4 chance of them failing after the first one. It depends. Are you a god? No. Some would say yes. I would say no. Do you remember your meeting with the old man Jennings? And you remember the stuff that you remember. You remember the stuff that you've had in the game, like the stuff that I've told you about. You remember. Just while I'm at it, isn't me being one of your champions to your benefit? Isn't me not being one of your champions to your benefit? I suppose it is, given the nature of my relationship to my champions right now and for the foreseeable while. You not being a champion technically is fortuitous circumstances, isn't it? Right? Don't they know when you ask, are you a god, you have to say yes, I've had things happen. Yeah. I know what you are, and I know what you are not, and you are not gods. Since we are talking, are we allowed to read any books off the shelf? We're not just getting into a random discussion with the merry gentleman, everybody. Keep it on topic to the dice. I will, these are technically yours now. As such, they should reflect who you are. I'll get these back to you tonight. And then he turns and walks out of the room with your dice in hand. He takes them, whether you discover this or not, he takes them to the Dryads of the Dryad Grove. The material made to use them are part of the Dryad's Grove. The box, rather. The material made to use the box. Part of the Dryad's Grove. And so he gets the same Dryads who created the box to fix the box, essentially. So what he does is, what they do is basically soften the wood and revert it, almost like he did with the Fey flowers earlier, the flower archers. They revert it back in time, as it were, to when it was a younger wood, a younger version of the wood, reversing the process of the wood burning that was done to make to etch Bobby into it. He takes that Bobby sign off of it, and then they would burn your name onto it. Apis. You catch up to the merry gentleman during the evening when you go to fight with Rakesh, and he gives you the box back with your name on it, Apis. And you say about these. When did you say when we first met you this time around that you were not looking for? Oh, sorry, you did say when we met you this first time around that you weren't looking for another champion. He says, yes, I suppose I did. You say you created these dice and they're indirectly providing answers, but I've asked questions regarding my current situation at the time, so how did you know that? Have you been watching me? Again, I'm not in the dice, Apis. I've got much more important things to be doing with my time. The dice have an extension of who I am and what my power is, I suppose, and so the dice answer as I would answer if I was in that situation. Okay, right. Besides which, there is a lot of interpretation based on how you interpret the answer given. A lot of that tells you more about yourself than the answer to the question. Did these dice belong to Jennings? He smiles and says, I think it's time to start, Rakesh. And the fight begins. For this one, you are given a Siren. You are fighting not in your usual location, but down by the waterside, down by a lake, a large lake that is sort of a turquoisey kind of a colour. Actually, no, that's a colour that could be in real life. So I think it's more of a magenta-y kind of a coloured water lake, because things in this world are weirdly coloured quite often. So you are fighting down by the waterside, and a beautiful woman comes up out of the water and just kind of rests on a rock and starts to... And you realise immediately from your knowledge of sirens through your mother's stories and things that siren song is incredibly charming, incredibly alluring, and can lure you in to mess you up in various ways. They will often lure you in and drown you, or if you're on a ship, they'll lure you in to shipwreck you. Sometimes they do it just for fun because why not? They're Fey and it passes for amusement for them. Sometimes they're doing it for more malicious reasons because they want to rob you or they want things you've got. Or they just want to send you off course. Maybe they don't want to kill you. Maybe they just want to redirect your ship so that you get lost at sea or something and whatever. So as soon as the siren song starts, you know that the source of the charming is the sound of the music itself, not just the panpipes this time like with the satyrs, but it's literally the music that is your ability to hear the song is what's charming you. Literally put mud in our ears. Yep, that's one way to do it. You very quickly, you're not even going to roll for this one. With you reading the books, the fact that sirens are pretty well known about in the material plane, and the fact that you know exactly what it is that's doing it immediately. As soon as she starts to sing, you feel yourself going. I'll just roll a wisdom save to see how long it is between getting charmed and not coming out of it, sort of thing. 9 plus your 2 for wisdom save is an 11. So it is a little while of you know what you have to do, but it's a little while before you can actually do it because you keep going down for the mud, but she immediately starts and you start to get yourself charmed until poof, you get a horse hoof to the face and damn it, Rakesh, ow! And he's like, pay attention. You're like, I'm trying to pay attention, there's a goddamn siren! And they're looking down and you're grabbing handfuls of mud and you're just like shoving it to your head, but then you've got like it just splayed down your ears before you get lured into it again, and then poof, kicks you in the stomach. You use that opportunity, you go down to the ground, you grab fistfuls of mud, you're trying to put it in your ears as much as possible. Keeps falling out when you get hit. Vomit onto him. Yeah. Eventually, though, you know what you've got to do, and doing it is a difficult enough task that you take a little while to get there. But eventually, with Rakesh's constant beating you out of your trance, out of your charm, you manage to overcome the charm of the siren. Eventually, you manage to block the charm effect from the siren, as she charms you and he harms you. Oh, look at that! It's the name of the episode. Realise eventually that horseshoes don't make for good earplugs if they're being worn by Rakesh. Torch tar, yeah, could do that as well. It's just as easy to grab a fistful of mud and eventually do it. So you eventually get around it. On your last day of training, there is one more that he's going to train you against. What else do you need to do while you're in the Feywild? I think we've pretty much done most of the things. I think during the day, if there's anything you want to do, let me know. But I think during the day as well, what you're going to do is you're going to have a little bit of downtime, a little bit of fun, playing a bit of a gambling game with some of the household folk, some of the people who work for his house. You lose a bit of money because when we got back from the material plane, you'd missed some gold. You were missing some gold and silver, so you lose a little bit of money, but it's not a huge deal. I've got a bunch of casino games, but I think for time, I'm not gonna go into them. You play some card games or something just for a bit of fun, and then you spend the rest of the day searching about weir curses. So you read up about weir curses. Basically, all you learn is pretty much what you've got already. Death is the easiest way to cure a weir curse because the curse itself resides with the body. One of the things you learn from this is that there are 4 parts to a person, and they are often called the body, the soul, the mind, and the whole. The body is the physical body that is on the material plane of existence. The soul is your spirit. It is like your essence of who you are. The mind is your intelligence and your sentience. And then the whole with a W, the whole is a harder to describe distinction between those 3 things. It's basically a connection of those things. So you can have your soul intact, you can have your mind intact, you can have your body intact, but you can have a disparity of not being quite right. And basically that's often when, like, for instance, if somebody's resurrected and they are resurrected in a body that's not their own, then your body is intact, but it's not in alignment with the others. And it's your whole that's out of whack then. Didn't get it until you went hee hee hee. So your body, soul, mind, and whole, and there's a kind of what it's defined as in most places. It's an imbalance, yes. When you have a wear curse, it is a curse of the body. It is not your soul or your mind that's affected by that wear curse. It's a call of your body. It's a curse on the body. The body is forced into this transformation every full moon. The longer you have this curse on your body, which also by extension is a curse on the whole, because obviously anything that affects the first three affects the whole, because it's an imbalance, it's an out of whack alignment of these three. The longer you have this curse on your body and whole, the more it can start to affect your mind and your soul, because as the longer you are with the curse, the more your personality starts to be shifted by it. People who have the wear curse for many years tend to find themselves a little bit more bloodthirsty, a little bit more enjoying of pain or sadism. So that sort of stuff is a problem. That can also then, after affecting the mind and changing your personality and what you think about and how you react to certain situations. After that's been gone for a while, after you've tarnished that part, then eventually your soul can get affected as well. It's the last thing to usually get affected by the curses of the wear curse. But once your soul starts to get affected, that's because you've been evil with this curse for long enough that eventually you'll be where you're destined to go to in the afterlife is affected and changed, and you end up in a different plane of existence essentially. So body, soul, mind, and whole, or mind, soul, body, and whole, whichever way around it is. And so the wear curse affects the body first, and then it can affect the mind, and then it can affect the soul. For someone as early into the process as Beladel or even Mosh, it's just a matter of curing the curse from the body. So death, all that to say, death is the easiest way to cure it, because death leaves the body behind on the material plane and takes the soul and mind off to the afterlife. Your soul and your mind becomes just all that's remaining in the afterlife, essentially. If you then resurrect the body, if you then bring a person back with the many different ways that you can bring a person back to life in D&D, you've then cured the curse, and then you bring them back, and then they're in alignment with the three. The three things are in alignment with the fourth thing, the whole. So easiest way to do it: kill them and bring them back to life. The next easiest way to do it is anything that realigns those things. Basically, in my games, the spell Greater Restoration is the way to realign those things for most things. It doesn't cure everything because it's only a level 5 spell, but if you cast it at higher levels, you can cure more and more things with it. So if you cast Greater Restoration on someone who has a curse that is affecting one of those 4 things, then you can usually realign it. You can get rid of the curse. So Greater Restoration also works. So killing them, Greater Restoration, remove curse. It's a spell specifically for removing curses. So casting that on them is a good way to do it, as long as they've not had it for long enough, because the DC for remove curse, in my games, remove curse, you actually have to make a check and succeed on a skill check. It's not just a one and done thing, because otherwise curses are worthless in my game. And like, what's the point of what's the danger and drama around being cursed if there's a spell that just gets rid of it without even needing a check? So in my games, it's a bit more of a ritual that you go through with the remove curse process. The DC is calculated using the length of time that you've been cursed. So if you've been a werewolf for like 10 years, it's highly unlikely that the person casting remove curse is going to be able to do it. What other things? Wish, obviously. Wish is a spell that can be used to remove curses as well. That's pretty much it. There are ways to lessen the effects of the curse. There are ways to help you get in control of your curse. There's ways to help you stop spreading the curse from your body to your mind, or from your mind to your soul. These things are like herbs and spices and stuff that you can find around town, or magic items and stuff that can help to remove the negative effects of the curse. But the only ways to get rid of it properly are pretty much those options that I outlined. That's what you learn during your downtime. I think that answers your question, hopefully. Right. write down these things in our book in case there's stuff Mosh and Belladel don't know. Yeah, you jot down this information in a book somewhere, piece of paper. You put it somewhere, and you have that for later when you get back to the material plane. Is silver effective against the cursed body? You know that silver is effective against the curse because the curse doesn't like silver, but it's not enough to get rid of. It's not enough to cure a body of silver. Silver is one of the things that if you grind up silver and take it in small doses, that's one of the ways to keep the curse from having any effect during full moons. Wolfsbane as well is another one. Monk's Hood, all these sorts of things. They're all things that you can do and take, and teas that you can drink, stuff like that can help with the process of becoming a werewolf and like prevent you from becoming an evil version of that werewolf. Still maintain your own mind and stuff, but you can't cure it entirely. Can I ask who we're trying to remove curse info for? Because it's not up to date with the story. No worries, Will. Sunshine. So there are 2 people in the material plane. A friend of ours called Mosh. Mosh is a werewolf, has been for about 9 months. It'll be significantly more than that by the time we get back with the time skip that's happening with the material plane Twitch-tail bias. Material plane Feywild bias. So Mosh is one of them, and Mosh attacked a person, an innocent elf called Belladel, and Belladel was infected by the werewolf curse as well. And Belladel, you don't know his outcome. He might have not survived the transformation, and he might have died by now. But by the time you get back to the material plane, he might have become a werewolf himself. Without herbs or plants in the Feywild, that would be more effective. What is found in the mortal plane for controlling it? You get information on that. I'm not going to go through everything now, but like Monk's Hood, Wolfsbane, Silver, these things you can use those on the material plane, and it, as I say, it can help with the process, but it won't cure it. Basically, curing it, you want to kill them. You want kill them and resurrect them, wish it away, greater restoration it away, or remove curse it away. It says portal plane books, and maybe also get a librarian to tell us translation of the title of the thing we know is Holy Scripture, but Apis doesn't know, so that we just don't have to think about not using medical knowledge by accident. Sure, you ask one of the librarians, what does this book mean? And she goes, oh, it's old Elvish for holy book, I think, or Holy Scripture. It's something like that. It's an origin of as far as I know, it's an origin of the worlds. How the planes and the portals were planes and the planes and the gods were created. Oh wow! Basically, the Isgithur Sanctaid is basically an origin story of my world. It's a Bible, as it were. And I have written a lot of it. It's like an actual book. I've not finished it, but I've written several chapters of it. Curiosity-wise, can entities have were-curse to be a were-human or were-elf, etc.? Yes, they can. So a jackal-were is not a were-jackal. A were-jackal and jackal-were are 2 different animals, 2 different creatures in this world. A were-jackal would be a humanoid person who transforms into a jackal at full moons. A jackal-were is a jackal that transforms into a humanoid-looking thing like at will. It's not tied to the moon, but it is tied to lamias and things. If you want to see jackal-weres in action, you can see them in the isolation games that I did for the Vive la Daily things. I want to get our mitts on that thing someday. Well, you know Grid, the Uruk that was just here on this plane of existence? The one that is actually played by a friend of mine in a home game that's crossed over with Twitch Tales now. She was here as the Merry Gentleman's guest. She actually has it. It's for her reason that I wrote the thing in the first place, because she found it in Seed's Village. Back in like the early days of me playing my home games, they investigated the village and she found that book, and she didn't realize the significance of it at first, but she like studied it and was like, oh, look at that. I know for a fact Grid doesn't have that book anymore. Don't know what you're talking about. Curious whether jackal-were could bite a were-jackal and have curses cancel each other out. Yeah, maybe. A jackal that turns into a jackal-were at full moon. Anyway, getting silly now. So, you spend the day doing reading about your curses of were curses and things, and eventually you head to the training. And Merry Gentleman says you're coming along very well. I think we're pretty much there with this. I have one more that I have reason to believe you're already familiar with how these things charm you. So, let's see your skills with it. And as he says this the same lake side that you were at before for the Siren, It comes out of the water. This bulge comes out of the water, and you see this beautiful woman again, very Siren-like, with her hair stretched back, and she comes out of the water and sort of rests on a rock, and she says, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" And you realize, oh shit, it's a brainfish. So, as you fight with Rakesh using he's using short blades now. He's using two one-handed scimitars, and so he's training you in like two-handed fighting for that purposes as a fighter. As you're fighting with him, you are being peppered with riddles by the brainfish. For anyone who doesn't know, maybe you missed a few episodes. There is a creature of my own devising in the game, a homebrewed creature called a brainfish, which is like a huge whale-sized creature that tells you riddles. The beautiful woman is actually just like an anglerfish's lure. Once you snap yourself out of it, you realize it's actually like this terrifying translucent skinned fish with big eyes and like a stalk at the top of its head that it can cast illusions on, essentially, to make you charmed. The same way a goblin's like a feather quill. Yeah. You have to beat this thing, and you've already done so once in the Feywild, so no roll required. You already know how to respond of this. Basically, how to avoid being charmed by a brainfish is to beat it in a game of wits. They are attracted to intelligence, so using like word games and things will usually attract them to the shore because they like to eat intelligence. They like to eat brainwaves. And then once they have charmed you, once they throw riddles at you, and the riddles, if you get involved in the riddles, if you actually like think about them and try and answer them and stuff, and you like enjoy doing riddles, that's how they charm you. Once you're charmed, they will devour you whole, and then they will digest you from the brain first. The brain waves will be the first to digest, and then the rest of the body dissolves as well, and that's how they eat. It's pretty gruesome. However, once you're inside them and being digested, if you manage to snap out of your charm and charm them in return by giving them riddles, if you can give them riddles that it takes them a while to answer, then that's how to avoid being charmed by them. So as you're fighting, you're trying to come up with your own riddles that are better than the riddles that it's giving you, essentially. Bilbo and Smeagol, yes. Similar situation. A riddle off. I flow like the ocean, splashing in a red cave. Swap me to show your passion, release me to show hate. I love it. I wasn't intending on actually doing any riddles today, but let's see if I can get this one. I flow like the ocean, splashing in a red cave. Splashing in a red cave. It's like paint in a paint pot. Flowing, it's a liquid. Splashing, blood. Something about blood. Swap me to show your passion. Body fluids? Blood? You might swap blood to show your passion. You cut yourself to show, and you like... And release me to show hate. So blood. Spit. Splashing in a red cave of the mouth. Flow like the ocean. Yeah, it's going to be spit. Flow like the ocean, spit. Splashing in a red cave. The red is the thing that's not splashing is red. Yeah, spit. Saliva. Very cool. Anyway. You fight alongside Rakesh. You give these riddles as best you can to avoid the brainfish. The merry gentleman is enjoying the brainfish's riddles as well. He probably can't help himself. Once or twice he's enjoying this little reprieve from his weekly dangers and routines that he's off doing, exhausting himself every day. He's starting to look more and more exhausted every night that you're seeing him. But for this one, he's sort of sitting with his feet up on a rock, and and every so often he'll jump in with his own riddle just because he can't help himself. And like it'll stump both you and the brainfish. You kind of like just stop for a second. And then you'll remember you're meant to be fighting in Rakesh, and you'll just be like, oh yeah, that's right. You'll go back to fighting again. Very good. The merry gentleman is impressed with what you've done, how your training is going, and says, listen, Apis, after the fight is over and Rakesh is licking wounds, as it were. He says, listen, Apis, I can't in good conscience keep you here any longer. It is about time that I send you home. You will have recognized when you get back that, unfortunately, with the bias being shifted, a lot more time will have passed than you're expecting. Thankfully, the portal situation of your demon plane issue It wasn't quite as pressing as you may have been led to believe. That portal, I've been aware of it for some time. It is certainly growing in power now, but it will become a problem if we don't deal with it soon. It is finally getting to the point where we cannot ignore it anymore. Ideally, I would have had more time to train you with certain ways to avoid not only charms but fear effects and certain necromantic magics that can sap life from you and all sorts of things like that. But I don't have the time for that. Unfortunately, you're going to have to learn those things on your own. This portal's threatening the villages of my friends. It is, but in the bigger picture, I'm afraid one village does not account for world-ending tragedy. I know it's tough to hear, but I'm forced to look at bigger pictures. There are much greater problems underway, much greater threats coming in the coming years. How much time will have passed when I get home? At this stage, I think it'll be around 8 months. 8 months? About that, right. And I've been here for 8 months. Well, you've been here for a couple of weeks, I think, but people, why isn't I mean, what will have happened to my friends? They're mostly fine still. Things will have changed, but they're not much as. Look, Apis, you're focusing on the wrong things. I don't agree. That's your conclusion, and I'm not surprised by it, but I don't agree. I have to take you back to the material plane. I have a friend, a champion that will be looking for you. Them. Things are complicated with this time being linear. You have someone to meet. You are needed. Your services are needed in something more pressing than Shadridge. Shadridge is fine. They are looking after themselves. They've become a war front, I suppose. They've become a battlement. They've requested and been given aid by various members of your human kin, and they are defending themselves against oncoming slaughts, the onslaught coming from the demons. The hobgoblins have been joining forces with them, and they've been fighting alongside each other. At the moment, everything's fine. More important and more pressing is you're required in the Drenvale. It is an area of forest where I'm from. Well, not originally, but where my home on the material plane is. I have a friend there, a protege of sorts, a young elf, very young but very skillful. He shows great promise. He has druidic abilities, but they come naturally. He never learned from a druid grove, a druid circle. His skills are unlike those I've seen from any of his ilk, especially of his age. He is very young. His name is Seed, or he goes by Seed anyway. One of his many names is Seed. I want for you to meet him. I want for you to help him fixing certain problems. There are abjurative elements, protective elements, protecting my village on that plane of existence, and they have over time been destroyed or abandoned. It is his task to fix them up, and he is not moving with as great a speed as I would have hoped. I need you to help. I can only hope I still have need to solve my friend's wear problems, and the demons haven't solved it permanently for them. Mosh is still alive, if that's what you're asking. I've made promises to my friends. They'll be worried about me. I need to get home. They are not worried about you. Well, that's rude. No, they're not worried about you because I've sent someone in your place. What the hell does that mean? There is a stand-in. Someone that would help them to not worry about you. They are acting as under my command as you would in that situation. You, in all intents and purposes, you have been helping Shadridge with their war on the demons. You have been there, and you have been doing what I needed you to do, while you have been here and doing what I needed you to do. Isn't there a risk for me to forget all that I've learned? And like, why are you telling me now? As soon as I leave the Feywild, there is a risk of it, yes. And I would normally forego that risk. I can manipulate certain things so that you remember your time here, but I don't, under current circumstances, want to enrage the rest of the Archfey Council by doing things that aren't called for, aren't things that are absolutely necessary. So I will be sending you with a note. I've pre-written the note, and he hands you over the pre-written note that you started the post Feywild arc with. Hands you over this note, and it's got this wax seal on it and stuff. It says, "Read this, and you should be fine." You knew I'd have a problem with this, and you said nothing. You owe me. That's not how this works. Bigger picture, my lord. Is this the plan of one being or a group of people, opening portals and weakening defenses? A group of people. The opening of portals and the weakening of defenses is a greater ploy as far as I can ascertain. It's a greater ploy of the demon lords. They are entering the material plane in strategic locations to try and establish a boundary, a base. There's going to be more of them coming, but in a great deal of time. They need time to set up first. Did they come back with a were curse for our two friends? Because that's what I would have done. There's only so much I can do from here, Apis. I've already told you that. Your friends are fine as they are, in the forms that they have, the forms that they have chosen, or the choices that have been made for them. They're not in danger. In fact, in the current situation, they are a great asset in the forms that they are. I've told you that if your friends come to me here, I would be able to fix them. Well, return them to what they were. But as it is, I can't fix them from afar. There are conclusions that we will draw from your actions. I understand that. Have the demon lords tried this before? You have sentinels, you said? Yes, sentinels. These sentinels, who are they? Not really who, they are more what. They are objects of great power created by the founders of the Dren Vale, the village in the Drenlark. I suppose this is why you're careful when you say you're not truly a god, eh? I've never claimed to be a god. Well, not in thousands of years anyway. I went through a phase of, it's not important. So just to clarify, if I can get my friends here, they have an open invitation to visit. I wouldn't go so far. No. If you need to get your friends here, we can renegotiate that. But for now, you're focusing on the wrong things, Apis. It's one of the things that I wish I'd had time to teach you out of, this need for small picture things. There's a great, better use of your time. Tomorrow, meet me at the Dren Vale when you wake. And he strolls away from you as you continue trying to ask him further questions. What if we can't fix them all before the influence? Doesn't answer. That person you sent to replace me, what did you tell him to do exactly? He doesn't answer, he's just walked away. Welcome to dealing with an archfey, Spate. Seems to be a lot more take from your side and not much give. Yep. Because he can. He's an incredibly powerful, incredibly important person as far as he sees it. We short-lived races focus on much and short-lived things at a time, it is true. The last thing in the library I want to learn about is knowing what the other side of a portal is before stepping through, even seeing the other side as well. Yes, that's going to be, so that's something, just to cut to a chase, True Dave, that's something that you will learn about through your studies of portals and things. It's also something that you'll learn about in time as a Horizon Walker as well. That is a That is a thing that you're going to get as you level up as a Horizon Walker. The more you put into Horizon Walker, more levels, the better your abilities with Horizon Walking portals and things will get. And so that's something that'll come in time. But you do read a little bit about it. It's not going to be enough to actually be able to do it. But you learn the theory behind it. And for the most part, what you pick up on is stuff like looking out for subtle clues, like if it's slightly hotter in this area and some scorched grass and things, it's more likely a portal to the plane of fire, stuff like that. Apis is sitting at the kids' table now. Yep. We're able to choose if we divulge to our friends if they've been seeing a false us for 8 months. Yeah, he hasn't made that decision for you. It's going to be your choice to whether or not to divulge that to them or not, and whether they'll be freaked out by it. So you have finished your training with this brainfish and Rakesh. You head back to bed and you're knackered, so you go to sleep for another long rest in the Feywild, in the Merry Gentleman's abode. In the morning, as you rest, as you wake up, you feel well rested. You've been given the note from the Merry Gentleman. You've got your map of the Drenlac on your cloak. And you still have a cut, relatively fresh cut on the right of your brow, forehead, and small scratches on your arms from the fight last night with Rakesh, from all of your training that you've been doing. You've lost some money on the horses. You've lost some fire arrows on the way here to the Merry Gentleman's things. You've got potion ingredients. You've got your box updated to have Apis' name. You've got a whole bunch of your books with notes in it. We're pretty much good to go with everything that's been accounted for in the things that you didn't know about how they happened during your time in the Feywild. You're pretty much there. The last thing to happen is as you go to the Dryad Grove in front of the Dren tree, the Merry Gentleman is there waiting for you with a bunch of the Dryads of the Grove, the Dryad protectors, the guardians of the Grove. Mel is there as well, waiting for you. And she is super excited, sort of like bouncing up and down, and she sort of greets you and buzzes towards you, and is the first to sort of see you arriving, and she goes,
Apis, look at this, look at what they've got for me. They've given me a gift, departing gift as we leave. It's beautiful flowers, and look, I've got more of those flowers that way.
And she flies over, and there's like a little pile of those fey flowers, and she goes,
look at these, these are the ones that make me go faster.
And you are given them, you take the fey flowers. Archer, Empress, Archer.
I'm sorry, Apis, Archer. They use the Merry Gentleman. He uses Apis, and I forget.
Yeah, well, never mind. You take the flowers from Mel, and you put those in your inventory as well, because the fey flowers are something that you had as well when you arrived. And then she sort of like flies up and perches on your back and slides off a little bit, and one of the Dryads comes over and says, you little one, you are getting much too large to ride on this mount in particular, not without the proper saddling. And she reaches out and she sort of curls her hand up towards a nearby tree, not the Dren tree, but one of the nearby ones. And the branch sort of like moves itself down towards her for her to pluck a smaller branch from, not quite a twig, but like a bigger piece of wood. She snaps it off, but as she snaps it off, it seems to give, as if it's like giving itself willingly. It doesn't snap the wood, it just kind of heals up immediately underneath it. The Dryad kind of moves her thing, and then she says something in Sylvan that you don't quite catch, but it's something that seems like some kind of a thanking of the tree. She manipulates and draws out this wood and sort of prunes the leaves from it. And then she fastens it to the back of your bag, and these sprouts, these leaves sort of sprout out from that and attach to the wood bending. Yeah, that is a spell in my game that I've house ruled called. What is it called? I can't remember. Something to do with woodworking. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a cantrip that basically turns wood into something soft like clay, which gives you advantage on woodworking checks and things. So she has this cantrip, and she molds this wood into this like perch for Mel to sit on. Mel sits on the perch, and she's like, "Oh, this is much better," and she can now ride on you without an issue of falling off and stuff. Did you ever grab any hushbrush wood? You did not. No, that's not something that we had in our inventory when we came back through the Feywild. So unfortunately, you didn't get about getting some. You can always find some later when you come back to the material. When you come back to the Feywild, or when you find some on the material plane. There will be some items from the Feywild found on the material plane. It'll just be a little bit more expensive to buy them. The Merry Gentleman makes sure that you have the note given, checks out the map on your cloak, and offers a couple of suggestions to what's changed since the map book was updated, and says actually there's a bit more of a forest here, and this part's been deforested. There's actually a big sort of part down here that's a little bit more of an open area, blah blah blah. And then he goes right about here, and he presses you in the back, right where the cloak is, and he goes right here, put a green dot. And you're like, okay, what's the green dot? And he goes, that is the location of the village that you're looking for, Drenvale. Are we not going to the village now? We are, but Dren can be temperamental about who passes through her. And he points to the tree over the moat. Dren can be temperamental, and with your abilities as a Horizon Walker, I can't guarantee that it will go as smoothly as I thought. It could be that you don't pass through in the same way that I expect you to. Alright, well, I guess I'll see you on the other side one way or another. Yes, I hope so. He turns to the tree and gives like a low whistle, a rumbling whistle. And as he's doing this, you see like cracks appearing in the dren tree, the trunk of it. The bark of it seems to splinter upwards. It's about 10 feet wide and about 20 feet tall or so. And then as it reaches about 20 feet up, it suddenly turns right angles and shatters inwards, and there's this like doorway almost cracked in the bark of the wood, and then the wood starts to peel forwards off of the tree, off of the trunk of the tree. As this is happening, you're like watching in awe, but you say, Odval, are we going? And he says, we're on our way, yes. And it starts to come down. He goes, and you say, there's so much more I wanted to ask. And he says, you'll have time. Don't forget, you can always ask the dice questions if you really have pressing answers. The wild woman, does she owe us a favour? In a way she does, yes. Not a big one, but she owes you certain hospitality in the same way that I owed... what's his name? Ferndal. This is in the same way that I owed Ferndal hospitality. Oh, Ferndal. Hospitality. In the same way? He smiles and says, in a very similar way, yes. The back drawbridge, essentially, has crossed over the moat now and landed with a soft thud onto the other side, and the slight curve to this huge tree's trunk offers this obvious walkway across into the base of the tree. As this thing has come down, you've seen that instead of this light-coloured soft interior of the wood, the xylem and phloem of the tree, you see instead a huge tunnel, an enormous tunnel, and it stretches way further than the other side of the tree. And there is this sense of sadness. If you've ever been at the end of a really lovely holiday, especially if you're leaving somebody behind, like somebody you've been visiting and you're heading home, it's that kind of sadness. It's the sadness that comes at the end of a holiday. It's the sadness of returning back to a life of like mundane and like doing your jobs and stuff if you don't really do a job that you enjoy. That kind of sadness comes on you, and you realise it's not only because it's the end of this Feywild holiday, but it's because you're about to return to the material plane where the world is a little bit boring in comparison. Your senses will be dulled, yes. You and the Merry Gentleman stride forwards across this makeshift drawbridge. And as you walk, you point down at the water. By the way, I have a vial of this water. Cocks an eyebrow and looks towards you. Really? I took it from the moat and it burned my fingers. Yes, it would. What is it? Is it acid? It has the properties of acid when it's in the moat, but it's just water. So this is just water in the vial? He says, it is, yes. Oh. So like I could drink it, it's not acid. You could drink, now that it's been removed from the moat, it's entirely just water. Very pure water. Some of the purest, in fact. Alright. So why does it burn me? It's a protective abjuration around the Gentry. Right? You don't want to swim in it, he says, with a bit of a chuckle to himself. You arrive at the mouth of the tree. You can hear the sounds of, like, when you're coming in from the other side of the Gentry, into the Feywild, you can hear music. You can hear faint, like, carnival music. You can smell wafting of like carnival foods and like and popcorn and stuff and candy floss. And now you're going the other way. You realize that you've kind of gotten used to all of that stuff over time in the Feywild. You've gotten kind of charmed by the plane itself, and now it's just the removal of that. So it's like, it's not bad smells that you're smelling, but it's just smells like mundane, boring smells, and the lack of sound, the lack of music from the other end of this tunnel. You're just left with this sense that it isn't really an inviting place to go, but you know that you have to because it's back to the material plane. You're finally returning home. It also feels rather cold. There's a bit of a cold breeze coming in from the other end because now that you've been here for a while, it is now winter on the other side, or it's coming up to winter on the other side of this portal. As you walk forward through the tunnel, you have one last chance, one last moment to ask the merry gentleman anything else. As you walk from the Feywild back to the material plane, shoulder to shoulder with the merry gentleman, back into the Dren Vale. What do you want to say to him? What is the last thing you want to say to the merry gentleman before we jump back to present day, having concluded the Feywild arc of our campaign for now? Ordval. Yes? You walk into the tunnel and the sound is deadened around you. You hear the sound of the drawbridge coming up behind you. You say, "How did you know my mother?" And he says, "Well, that's easy. She's one of my champions." And that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. I will see you next time. Bye. Whoa, look at the names of all these cool people supporting me. If you want to see your name here, check out my Patreon. There's a lot of cool perks on there for you. You'll enjoy it. Oh yeah, also, the merry gentleman gave you verdant armor of the plant that he needs you to do to fix the Earth Sentinel. That was done on the last day as well. Cool. Okay, bye.